Minecraft portal. But is it a national proxy? Chapter 1. Yushi University, Men's Dormitory Building, Room 404. The night was ink black, and Yushi University, which had been noisy all day, was gradually returning to silence. Inside room 404, the sound of typing keyboards mixed with game voice chat. Go. Chin Yu, you useless jerk, heal me. Don't worry, the skill is on cooldown. In stark contrast was the figure standing on the balcony. Yi Tian stood with his hands in his pockets, quietly observing the dark campus road below. The night wind stirred the hem of his clothes. His eyes were deep, as if he were waiting for something, or perhaps looking through the tranquil night at another bizarre, block-shaped world. Old Yi, stop looking at the scenery. Hurry up and join us, we're 3 short of a 4-man team. His roommate shouted while furiously clicking the mouse. Yi Tian didn't turn around, simply replying indifferently. No, I'm waiting for someone. Waiting for someone. Who are you waiting for so late? A girlfriend. Just then. Dong. 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 A series of dull, powerful knocks suddenly sounded. What the, who is it? In the middle of the night, is it the dorm supervisor checking rooms? Chin Yu, who was closest to the door, snatched off his headphones, mumbled to himself, and shuffled over in his slippers. Coming, stop knocking. Chin Yu casually pulled open the slightly worn wooden door of the dorm room. Let me tell you, we definitely haven't used any illegal elector. Before Chin Yu could finish his sentence, it was as if someone had suddenly grabbed his throat, and all sound instantly caught in his windpipe. The hallway outside the door was neither empty nor occupied by the dorm supervisor. Instead, it was filled with people. They were uniformly dressed in dark green military uniforms, standing tall like pines, almost completely filling the narrow corridor. What made Chin Yu's scalp tingle was that the men weren't holding thermoses or books, they were holding Type 95 assault rifles, gleaming with cold metallic light. The dark muzzles were slightly lowered, but the wave of iron-blooded killing intent that hit him instantly made Chin Yu's legs go weak. Chin Yu's mind went blank. A heavily armed soldier expressionlessly stepped aside, revealing an elderly man standing in the center. The old man was about 50 years old, with slightly graying temples, but his back was straight as a sword. On his shoulder, golden epaulets shone brightly under the dim corridor light, clearly displaying a single gold star and wheat stalks. Major General. This was not a drill instructor from military training, this was a true general holding substantial power. The other 2 roommates in the dorm also noticed that something was wrong. The moment they turned their heads, their keyboards and mice clattered to the floor, and they froze in their chairs. The old man's gaze was sharp, and he scanned the room with a loud and authoritative voice. Excuse me, is Comrade Yi Tian present? Comrade Yi Tian. This address exploded in Chin Yu's ears. He mechanically turned his stiff neck toward the balcony. At this moment, Yi Tian, who had been standing with his back to everyone, slowly turned around. Facing a room full of armed soldiers, facing the Major General, Yi Tian's face showed no surprise, much less any panic. His expression was so calm it was as if he had anticipated this moment, even carrying a hint of, "You finally arrived," indifference. Yi Tian walked past the dumbfounded Chin Yu, stood before the group, met the old man's gaze, and gave a slight nod. I am Yi Tian. The old man stared intently into Yi Tian's eyes, seemingly trying to find a flaw in the young man's composure. But after a few seconds, he was secretly astonished. This young man's character is tenacious. To remain composed even when Mount Tai collapses before him, it seems the great elder's words were true. The scrutiny in the old man's eyes instantly turned into solemn respect. He even stepped slightly aside and made a gesture of invitation. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Zhongguo, Comrade Yi. Since your identity has been confirmed, please, let's go. There are some matters we need to discuss in detail elsewhere. Yi Tian didn't waste words, he simply straightened his collar, his tone steady. General Zhong, let's go. Time waits for no one. His tone wasn't that of a suspect being taken away, rather, it sounded as if he were commanding the operation. Watching Yi Tian stride out of the dorm, Zhongguo followed closely, with 2 rows of soldiers turning in unison to escort them. This scene completely shattered the worldviews of Chin Yu and the others. As the group walked out of the dorm building and onto the open ground below, Yi Tian realized the situation was even bigger than he had imagined. The area beneath the usually quiet dormitory building had been cleared. Several off-road vehicles and troop carriers bearing white military license plates were parked under the streetlights. The red and blue flashing lights were off, but the solemn silence was even more suffocating. Further away, at the school gate, a blockade line was faintly visible, already set up. The entire Yushi University was under military control tonight. And all of this was merely to pick up one person. Before Qin Yu and the others could recover from their shock, several serious-looking military officers walked into the dorm room. Students, there is no need to be nervous. Although he said this, the officer's stern face showed no sign of relaxation. Zhang Zhongguo did not immediately get into the car. Instead, he looked back at the three trembling students and quietly gave an instruction to the adjutant beside him. Then, he spoke to Yi Tian's roommates. Our operation tonight is classified as top national secret. We are here because we require Comrade Yi Tian's assistance with a matter of great importance. After speaking, several soldiers quickly stepped forward, holding several documents stamped with a red five-pointed star. Please cooperate by temporarily handing over all electronic products. We need to conduct a technical review to ensure no information leaks. Furthermore, this is a top national security confidentiality agreement, please sign it. Let what happened today rot in your stomachs. You must not mention a single word of it to anyone, including your parents. Otherwise, you will be prosecuted for treason. Treason. Qin Yu tremblingly took the pen. As he signed, he secretly glanced downstairs. Through the window, he saw Yi Tian, the guy he usually ate and played games with, being personally ushered into a special Hongqi sedan by General Zhang, who held the car door open for him. Suddenly, Qin Yu seemed to remember something. He sharply inhaled, grabbed his roommate's arm, and his voice trembled. Holy crap, I remember now. That General Zhang, I saw him in last year's military parade broadcast. He was the leading general. He's a person who's frequently on the news broadcast. What major thing has old Yi been doing behind our backs? The three roommates exchanged glances, watching the motorcade slowly drive away outside the window, feeling that the night wind tonight was exceptionally cold. The black Hongqi sedan drove smoothly through the night. The atmosphere inside the car was quiet and somewhat oppressive. A soundproof panel had been raised between the front and back seats, and besides the faint hum of the engine, there was no other noise. Zhang Zhongguo closed his eyes to rest, and Yi Tian remained silent, merely looking at the rapidly receding streetscape outside the car window, his expression calm. About an hour later, the vehicle drove into a deep mountain base with no distinguishing marks. After passing through numerous checkpoints, Yi Tian was led into a special room. This was not an interrogation room, but rather a makeshift wartime command post. The four walls were silver-white metal, the furnishings extremely simple, with only an alloy table and two chairs, but the red light flashing in the corner and the precise recording equipment on the table indicated its extremely high specifications. All conversations here would go straight to the top. Zhang Zhongguo gestured for Yi Tian to sit down, while he sat opposite him. He took off his military cap and placed it on the table, his sharp eyes, accustomed to judging countless people, locked onto Yi Tian, and he spoke directly. Comrade Yi Tian, last night the Grand Elder saw a person in his dream who claimed he could bring a foundation for 10,000 generations to Huasha. Was that dream you're doing? Yi Tian nodded, his tone frank. Indeed, it was I who, through special means, invited the Grand Elder to find me. Although he had prepared himself mentally before coming, and the intelligence department's analysis of Yi Tian's recent abnormal behavior had led to similar conclusions, hearing Yi Tian admit to such supernatural means firsthand still caused Zhang Zhongguo's hand, holding the water cup, to pause slightly, and a storm raged in his heart. But he was, after all, a battle-hardened general, and he quickly suppressed his shock, getting straight to the point. Since that's the case, let's not beat around the bush, Comrade Yi. What exactly is this method of strengthening the nation and enriching the people that you promised the Grand Elder in his dream? Yi Tian leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped on the table, and slowly said. 3 days ago, a world awakened in my mind. That world is vast, almost boundless, with inexhaustible resources, trees, minerals, water, that will never dry up. But most importantly, there is a door there. Yi Tian paused, his gaze deepening. That world has a portal that connects to other worlds. The worlds of Bint are real, but... Yi Tian sighed, shrugging his hands somewhat helplessly. My strength is too weak. In those and other worlds, I couldn't move an inch and died countless times. Awakened world. Infinite resources. Died countless times. Zhang Zhongguo frowned deeply. He understood every word Yi Tian said, but put together, they completely exceeded his cognitive scope. As a staunch materialist warrior, he felt these words sounded more like a mythical tale or a science fiction novel. Comrade Yi, what you're saying is a bit too advanced and abstract for us. We need more practical evidence. Evidence. That's simple. Yi Tian didn't offer further verbal explanations. He simply raised his right hand slightly and casually waved it towards an empty corner of the room. Whoosh! Without warning, the previously empty corner of the room was instantly filled with objects that appeared out of thin air. These were not ordinary rubble, but neatly stacked piles of gray stones, forming perfectly cuboid shapes. Each stone was sharp-edged, with a peculiar pixelated texture on its surface, as if cut to a molecular level by precise industrial machinery, stacked together seamlessly. Zhang Zhongguo suddenly stood up, the chair behind him toppling to the ground with a clang. He stared wide-eyed at the stones. Is this spatial technology? Before he could recover from his shock, Yi Tian waved his hand lightly again. Swish! The pile of gray stones filling the corner instantly changed color, turning a deep, dark black. A rich scent of coal wafted over. These are the most basic products of that world, cobblestone and coal blocks. Yi Tian pointed at the black blocks, his tone calm. In this world, matter can be transformed in an instant. General Zhang, do you believe me now? Zhang Zhongguo walked to the pile of coal blocks, his trembling hand caressing their cold, smooth, perfectly right-angled surfaces. As a high-ranking military official, he knew very well what this meant. Creation out of thin air, perfect material forms. This was not just resources, this was a complete subversion of modern science. After a long while, Zhang Zhongguo took a deep breath, forcibly calmed himself, and sat back in his chair. His gaze became unprecedentedly solemn and fervent. All right, Comrade Yi Tian, I believe you indeed possess a magical world, but you just said you died countless times, what does that mean? At this, Yi Tian's expression became somewhat peculiar. The creatures in that world, whether zombies, skeletons, or iron golems, have no intelligence. You can think of them as NPCs in a game, only wandering mechanically. Yi Tian began to explain his bitter history. My original idea was simple. Use the rules of that world to build fully automated monster grinders, mass-produce monster legions, and then use numerical superiority to directly sweep through the another world. However, those creatures don't obey my commands at all. Once released, they're like wild dogs off the leash, either running around aimlessly or fighting among themselves. At this point, Yi Tian was furiously complaining inwardly. Heaven knows what he went through these 3 days. He thought that awakening Minecraft would be like playing a modded survival game, getting draconic evolution or industrial craft, directly crafting nuclear bombs by hand, and sweeping through all the heavens in Dragon God armor. But what happened? That unreliable world gave him nothing but a vanilla map and a door to other worlds, no auxiliary mods at all. Redstone engineering was useless except for farming items. There was no high-tech equipment, only the most primitive swords and bows. He tried possessing a zombie to explore, but as soon as he went out, he was instantly killed by something unknown. He thought mastering a world meant being a creator god. Turns out it was just going out to feed kills to others. Later I discovered. Yi Tian collected his thoughts, looking at Zhang Zhongguo with burning eyes. Only when I imbue my consciousness into these creatures can they be commanded like extensions of my own body and unleash their true combat power. But the problem is, I only have one person's consciousness. Facing tens of thousands of enemies in another worlds, I can't control them all by myself, nor do I have enough powerful firepower support. Yi Tian leaned forward, stating his final conclusion, and his biggest objective for the night. This is why I sought cooperation with the nation. I have biological carriers that can revive infinitely and possess various characteristics, but I lack souls and equipment that can make them undergo qualitative changes. And the nation has countless military personnel with strict discipline and extremely high tactical literacy, as well as the world's top military industrial technology. So I provide the bodies and the world, and the nation provides the souls and weapons. What we will face are the resources of all the myriad worlds. Yi Tian thought. Since there are no mods, only vanilla MC, I will personally create a national-level super mod. I will let the nation help me create unique mods specifically for these creatures. Zhang Zhongguo's posture, which had been stiffened by shock, now began to tremble slightly involuntarily. A deathly silence fell over the room. It took a full half-minute before Zhang Zhongguo seemed to recover from the massive shock. He suddenly raised his head, his gaze no longer scrutinizing, but filled with an urgency akin to seeking confirmation of a miracle. Comrade Yi Tian, I need to confirm the infinite resources you just mentioned again. Zhang Zhongguo's Adam's apple bobbed with difficulty, his voice becoming dry. When you say infinite, do you mean a quantity vast enough for us to squander for a century? Or do you mean, truly inexhaustible and endless in the literal sense? Yi Tian looked at the general before him, who had lost his composure, yet Yi Tian's expression remained calm and indifferent. He casually picked up the block of coal on the table and tossed it lightly. General Zhang, in that world, there is a mechanism called refresh, and a structure called a mob spawner tower. As long as I set up the corresponding automated facilities, such as a tree farm, I only need to stand there, and tons of raw wood will be chopped, automatically collected, and entered into my inventory. The same applies to coal. Speaking up to this point, a smile played on Yi Tian's lips, as if he were discussing a trivial matter. As for gold, that stuff is practically garbage in Minecraft, except for making a few special redstone components and eating. As long as I build a pigment tower above the nether bedrock layer, utilizing the aggro mechanism to make them continuously drop and die, I don't even need to lift a finger, I just need to stand underneath and wait. In less than a day, gold nuggets and gold ingots will pile up into mountains. If I wanted to, I could make the gold flow like water and fill this base. Garbage, flowing water. Zhang Zhongguo muttered to himself, his brain feeling as if it had suffered a heavy blow. As a general overseeing the whole picture, he knew all too well what Yi Tian's words represented. Are these even resources? This is clearly the pen that rewrites the course of human civilization. He suddenly stood up and paced back and forth in the cramped room, his military boots clicking rapidly on the floor. As he walked, he began to rapidly hypothesize, as if a magnificent blueprint for a powerful nation had already unfolded before him. Comrade Yi Tian, do you know what the infinite coal in your hands means? Zhang Zhongguo suddenly stopped, staring at Yi Tian with bloodshot eyes, his voice passionate. Currently, thermal power still accounts for the majority of our country's electricity structure. For the sake of environmental protection and carbon emissions, we have been forced to shut down a large number of small thermal power plants, and even implement rolling blackouts when energy is scarce. Moreover, a significant portion of our high-quality coal relies on imports, which poses the risk of being strangled by others. But if we had your infinite coal. Zhang Zhongguo took a deep breath, as if seeing thick smoke transforming into clean electric current. All of our thermal power plants could operate at full capacity, or even over capacity, without needing to consider cost or reserves. The cost of industrial electricity in our country would drop directly to freezing point. This would instantly ignite the fourth industrial revolution. Before Yi Tian could reply, Zhang Zhongguo turned his attention to the golden concept, his breathing becoming more hurried. In gold, infinite gold. In the eyes of ordinary people, gold is money and jewelry, but in the eyes of the nation, it is the best industrial conductor and corrosion-resistant material on the surface. Zhang Zhongguo violently waved his hand in the air, as if severing the chains of the old era. It's because it's rare and expensive that we have to use copper and silver as substitutes. If we possess infinite gold, I could order the Military Industry Institute to replace all circuits in precision instruments with pure gold. Our satellites, our missile chips, our supercomputers, their transmission efficiency would increase by an order of magnitude, and their heat dissipation and stability would reach theoretical limits. We could even use gold to lay submarine cables. This would be the most extravagant, yet most powerful, information superhighway in human history. At this point, Zhang Zhongguo's gaze finally settled on the concept of iron ingots. His voice became low, yet carried a chilling, iron-willed aura. And iron. Steel is the skeleton of industry and the backbone of national defense. If iron resources were also infinite, and of extremely high purity. Zhang Zhongguo placed his hands on the desk, staring intently at Yi Tian. Comrade Yi, currently, the cost of steel and the difficulty of smelting specialized steel are the biggest roadblocks in aircraft carrier manufacturing. But with infinite high-quality iron ingots, we wouldn't need to be so frugal. We could build aircraft carriers like dropping dumplings into a pot. No, not just aircraft carriers. We could forge a true steel torrent. We could equip every tank with double, or even triple, heavy armor. We could construct a high-speed rail network spanning the entire Eurasian continent, with even the rails laid using solid steel blocks. This wouldn't just be an increase in wealth, this would be an infinitely raised strategic fault tolerance. Zhang Zhongguo finished saying all this in one breath, his chest heaving violently. He picked up the water glass on the table, intending to take a sip to wet his throat, only to find that half the water had already spilled due to his previous movements, and his hand was still trembling slightly. That wasn't fear, it was extreme excitement. It was the ecstasy of watching his nation about to soar, about to leave behind those rivals who had once sanctioned, blockaded, and suppressed them. Yi Tian quietly watched the general who had lost his composure, and a sense of respect involuntarily rose in his heart. This was the nation's vision. While he was still thinking about using these items to earn some money and kill a few monsters in another world, the nation was already thinking about using them to recast great national assets and challenge global hegemony. Listening to Zhang Zhongguo's grand blueprint regarding the Industrial Revolution and the steel torrent, Yi Tian did not show the expected excitement. Instead, he simply listened quietly, then gently shook his head, a meaningful smile appearing on his lips. General Zhang, the scope is too small. Yi Tian's simple statement instantly brought the excited Zhang Zhongguo to a halt. The scope is too small. Zhang Zhongguo was astonished. Possessing infinite resources to recast national industry, was that scope still too small? Yi Tian leaned back slightly against the chair, his gaze seemingly piercing through the thick rock layer above his head, looking toward the vast and boundless multiverse. In truth, Zhang Zhongguo did not know that Yi Tian's true secret was not just Minecraft. To be precise, Yi Tian possessed two golden fingers. The first is the Minecraft world, serving as both base and rear, offering infinite resources and the protection of its rules. The second is the multiverse conquest system bound deep within his soul. The system's demands are blunt and brutal. It grants Yi Tian the power to open portals to other planes, but the price is conquest. He must subjugate and unify those worlds. That's why Yi Tian is so desperate to cooperate with the state. Solo, he can build houses in Minecraft, conquering worlds with tens of millions of people, or supernatural power, would kill him alone. Not to mention he can only control one living creature per trip. He needs a blade, an invincible blade, and the Huasha military is that blade. Collecting himself, Yi Tian looked at Zhang Zhongguo and slowly dropped the real bombshell. General Zhang, limitless coal and steel can at best make life on Blue Planet comfortable, but my goal, the true value behind the door I hold, was never comfort. Beyond basic resources, that world's core function is as a transit hub. Yi Tian tapped his temple. Inside my mind, countless coordinates are lighting up, each marks a real another world waiting to be conquered. Conquer, another world. Zhang Zhongguo's brows locked, his expression grave. For what end? Colonization. For evolution. Yi Tian spoke 4 words. Then he dangled bait no Chinese could refuse. General Zhang, you thought of industry, of technology. But have you considered that the door might open, not onto zombies or wasteland, but onto a world of cultivation civilization? At the word, cultivation, Zhang Zhongguo's teacup hand clenched, his breath froze. Yi Tian pressed on, voice dripping seduction. If there, sword riders soar the skies, men pluck stars with bare hands, sages live 1,000 years, while we, armed with modern gear and the gift of respawn, conquer them, seize their manuals, snatch their elixirs. Then it won't just be a national tech leap. Yi Tian leaned forward, enunciating each word. We might let all Washa soar like dragons, elevate the entire nation, our soldiers tanking missiles with flesh, our people breaking lifespan limits. General Zhang, set against flight through the heavens and eternal life, or a few tons of gold and coal anything more than roadside pebbles. Boom. If infinite resources had been a bomb, this immortal craze was a nuke. Zhang Zhongguo's mind detonated. As a high-level officer, he knew the state had never stopped probing human limits, but found no gateway. Now Yi Tian laid the great Tao at his feet. Invade foreign realms, plunder manuals, feed Washa, evolve the people. A path to catapult Chinese civilization from planetary to stellar. Only after a long silence did Zhang Zhongguo recover. He stared at Yi Tian, the light in his eyes utterly changed. Where once he'd seen a lucky kid on a gold mine, now he saw the helmsman of a civilizational leap. Zhang Zhongguo rose, straightened his uniform, his manner graver than ever. He was no fool, he caught Yi Tian's subtext. This world is mine, the gate is mine. I bring the state along because I need partners, not masters. That delicate line had to be held absolutely. So Zhang Zhongguo drew a deep breath and stretched out his calloused hand, voice sincere and forceful. Comrade Yi Tian, I understand, your ambition is China's opportunity. The state won't interfere with your authority in that world, nor overstep its bounds. On this special battlefield, you are the sole commander, we are your strongest rear. Which world you want to strike, the staff headquarters drafts the plan, group armies spearhead, the logistics department secures supplies. We cooperate, each takes what we need, you finish your conquest. The country wants national strength, wants that evolutionary chance leading to the heavens beyond. Yi Tian looked at the outstretched hand, a satisfied smile finally appearing. This was the attitude he wanted. Neither servile nor arrogant, mutual benefit. I won't be vassal, you won't steal the fruit. We share the cake, grow it together, elevate the whole nation. Yi Tian extended his hand and clasped Zhang Zhongguo's firmly. Pleasant cooperation, General Zhang. Cold light flickered in Yi Tian's eyes, battle intent toward the myriad heavens. Zhang Zhongguo didn't immediately lift the red secure phone to report. He merely glanced at the surveillance camera blinking faint red in the corner, then at the silently turning tape on the desk, and looked away. Every word, every punctuation, had already streamed through the highest encryption channel deep into Washa. At this moment, those elders atop the nation's power were doubtless as shaken as he. With no need for repeat reports, Zhang Zhongguo's taut nerves eased slightly. He studied the impossibly young college kid before him, scrutiny and authority faded, replaced by elders' appreciation and subtle warmth. Comrade Yi Tian. Zhang Zhongguo paused, waving a hand. Always calling you comrade feels stiff, too official. I'm old enough to be your father, if you don't mind, allow me to call you Shoutian, and in private you call me Uncle Zhang. It was a powerful political signal. From now on Yi Tian wasn't merely a partner or talent, but someone inside the protective circle. Yi Tian gladly complied, nodding with a smile. Sure, Uncle Zhang. That, Uncle Zhang, instantly shortened the distance between them. Zhang Zhongguo sipped water to soothe his throat, then asked the key question gnawing at him. By the way, Shoutian, the great elder dreamed of you last night. No ghostly portent, just the consciousness possession you spoke of, right? Uncle Zhang sees clearly. Yi Tian admitted it frankly. That's right. Although I possess that world, it's difficult to contact you all like making a phone call. So, I used my authority to briefly draw the Grand Elder's consciousness into that world, possessing a creature. He saw the information board I left there, which is why you came to find me today. At this point, Yi Tian's expression turned serious as he began to explain the core strategic value of this mechanism. This is also the true trump card I've prepared for the country. When we campaign in other worlds, our biggest concern is casualties. After all, every soldier is a parent's beloved child, and an elite trained by the nation with countless resources. But through this consciousness possession mechanism, the soldiers' physical bodies can remain safe and sound in secure bases on Earth, lying in stasis pods. Their consciousness will transcend dimensions and descend upon the monsters in the Minecraft world. If they unfortunately die in battle. Yi Tian paused, observing Zhang Zhongguo's reaction. For the soldier's physical body, it will only experience some mental shock, waking up with extreme weakness and headaches, similar to staying up for 3 days straight. After a period of rest, they can return to battle, full of vigor. Zero casualty war. Zhang Zhongguo's eyes widened abruptly, and his breathing grew heavy again. As a general who led troops into battle, he knew all too well the weight of those 3 words. If zero casualties could be achieved, the boldness of the Washa army's tactics would increase by countless levels. Suicide squads. Suicide attacks. Those would no longer be tragic sacrifices, but conventional tactics. Zhang Zhongguo could no longer sit still. The decisive and vigorous nature ingrained in a soldier's bones made him eager to test it. Since it's so miraculous, can I experience it now? I want to personally feel that sensation of consciousness leaving the body and controlling another. Yi Tian was a little surprised, but then nodded understandingly. No problem, but Uncle Zhang, the first experience might make you a bit dizzy, so be mentally prepared. With that, Yi Tian gently tapped his right hand in the air. Buzz. A strange ripple spread through the air, and then, a peculiar creature dropped onto the metal floor out of thin air. It was a humanoid creature nearly 2 meters tall, wearing a brown robe, its arms strangely folded within its sleeves across its chest. Most striking was its face, with an enormous, eggplant-like nose and iconic unibrow, making it look both comical and somewhat goofy. After it appeared, it first looked around blankly at the sci-fi metal walls, then let out a classic nasal sound. It was an original Minecraft villager. Zhang Zhongguo watched this oddly styled, even somewhat amusing creature, and his mouth twitched. This is the vessel. This is just the most basic villager, very safe for testing. Yi Tian suppressed a laugh and pointed to a chair. Uncle Zhang, please sit down and relax completely. The upcoming process will be like having a lucid dream. Zhang Zhongguo sat down as instructed, adjusted his breathing, and closed his eyes. He had also fought his way through a hail of bullets, possessing extremely strong psychological fortitude. In just a few seconds, he entered a state of calm. Initiating connection. Yi Tian murmured, pointing a finger at Zhang Zhongguo, then at the wandering villager. Instantly, an invisible white glow lit up from Zhang Zhongguo's glabella, like a streaking light, and instantly merged into the villager's body. The villager, who had been foolishly bumping its large nose against the wall, suddenly stiffened. The next second, it slowly turned around. The expression in its eyes, which had been dull and simple, now underwent a drastic change. The gaze became sharp, profound, carrying the authority and scrutiny of someone long in a high position. That was the gaze of General Zhang Zhongguo. The villager lowered its head, looked at its brown robe, then raised its head to look at its own sleeping body in the chair. This feeling of watching one's own body sitting there was simply indescribable, both absurd and shocking. This is consciousness possession. A deep voice emanated from the villager's mouth. Although the timbre had changed, carrying a strange electronic synthesized sound, the tone was indeed Zhang Zhongguo's. At this moment, Zhang Zhongguo tentatively took a step. There was no anticipated clumsiness or delay, instead, it was incredibly light. He felt as if he had shed his heavy, 50-plus-year-old body with its old injuries, returning to his 18-year-old self as a new recruit, filled with boundless energy. He walked around the room twice, even jumping in place a couple of times. Although his movements seemed a bit stiff due to the blocky body, the fluid sensation of complete control greatly surprised him. Good. 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 Zhang Zhongguo, now a villager, exclaimed, good, 3 times. If we can be in this state on the battlefield, even our disabled veterans can achieve glory in another world. However, when he instinctively tried to perform a rifle aiming motion, a problem arose. Zhang Zhongguo suddenly raised his arms, his movements precise and sharp, forming a posture of cradling an imaginary rifle. But the next second, his movements froze. He stared blankly at his hands. Although those 2 arms could swing freely and were full of strength, there were no fingers at the ends of the arms. No thumbs, no index fingers, not even the concept of a palm. They were just 2 bare, brown, rectangular blocks of flesh, like 2 pieces of bread stuck to his arms. This. Zhang Zhongguo frowned, his unibrow furrowing. He tried to make a fist but found it impossible. He tried to move his fingers, only to find that apart from the entire arm being able to move, there was no fine joint feedback at the end. Little Tien, what's going on? Zhang Zhongguo waved his two bare blocky hands, his tone puzzled. The arm strength is fine, but these hands are solid blocks. Without fingers, how can our soldiers pull triggers? How can they pull grenade pins? They can't even grip a gun, it would just slip right off. This was a fatal flaw. Without fingers, even if soldiers were equipped with Gatling guns, they couldn't press the firing button. Even if they were given medical kits, they couldn't tear open the packaging. Watching Zhang Zhongguo comically gesticulate in the air with his two block hands, Yi Tian, though wanting to laugh, knew this was a serious problem that needed to be solved. He began to explain. Uncle Zhang, this is a limitation of that world's rules. In that world, most creatures don't have such fine modeling as fingers. To change the creature's structure to grow fingers, my current authority is not enough. Speaking of this, Yi Tian changed the subject and spoke confidently. But, Uncle Zhang, why must we force people to adapt to the guns? Since the hands cannot be changed, then we will change the guns. Yi Tian pointed at Zhang Zhongguo's blocky arm, his tone ringing with conviction. The structure of living beings is determined by rules, but the weapons of the real world are made by us. No fingers to pull the trigger. Then eliminate the trigger. Have the military industry department change the firearm firing mechanism to pressure-sensitive or brainwave linked. As long as the blocky contact surface of the palm senses gripping pressure, it will automatically fire. The hand is blocky and can't grip the gun stock. Then completely redesign the stock, making it a grooved clasp style, or directly making it a sleeve style, allowing the warrior's arm to be inserted directly into the gun body and locked in place like an exoskeleton. Yi Tian's words were like sunlight breaking through the clouds, leaving Zhang Zhongguo stunned. A moment later, that villager looked up and laughed heartily, though the sound it made was strange. Ha! 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 But it conveyed a sense of sudden enlightenment and boldness. You're right, I was overthinking things. Zhang Zhongguo looked at his square arm, his eyes gleaming with fervor, as if he could already see countless fully armed block armies. How can a living person be stifled by something so trivial? So what if they don't have fingers? Since this is a national-level cooperation, let those old guys in military production get moving and custom build an exclusive block weapons system for these block creatures. I'm going back now to issue the order. 3 days, no, within 1 day, I want to see the first assault rifle that these block hands can wield. With the finalization of the block weapon system concept, Yi Tian knew that the most difficult period of adjustment in the cooperation had passed. He looked at Zhang Zhongguo, who was still excitedly gesturing with the block hand, and spoke up at the right moment. Uncle Zhang, since we have the plan, let's have the subordinates arrange the personnel quickly. My suggestion is not to rush a full rollout. Please arrange for some personnel to enter the Minecraft world with me. I need to first massively replicate the basic redstone facilities, such as the iron farm, automatic chicken cooker, and villager breeder. Troops should not move until provisions are ready. After securing logistics and infinite resources, we can then arm the first batch of special forces. At the same time, we can dispatch a small elite scout team to enter that another world through the portal for reconnaissance. Speaking of this, a trace of apprehension flashed in Yi Tian's eyes. I've been to that world before, but because I only had a sword, I was instantly killed by monsters not far into the exploration and died back quite a few times. Therefore, I'm not too clear about the specific distribution of combat power over there. We need professionals to investigate the situation. Good, no problem. Zhang Zhongguo replied. Immediately, Yi Tian had a thought and released the state of consciousness possession. Buzz. That dull-witted villager instantly slumped to the ground, then turned into a plume of white smoke and vanished. Meanwhile, Zhang Zhongguo, sitting in the chair, trembled suddenly and slowly opened his eyes. After waking up, Zhang Zhongguo subconsciously raised his hands. Looking at these large hands, calloused, with distinct fingers and flexible joints, he felt a momentary sense of unreality. The sense of power and constraint brought by the block hands seemed to linger in his nerve endings. He clenched his fists hard, then let out a long breath, completely withdrawing from that strange experience. There's no need to go through the trouble of arranging things below. Zhang Zhongguo stood up, tidied his slightly wrinkled military uniform, and looked out the door with profound eyes. Elder Li and the others heard all of our conversation just now. Given Elder Li's decisiveness, the relevant orders were probably issued while we were still testing. After speaking, Zhang Zhongguo looked at Yi Tian, his gaze carrying a hint of encouragement. Let's go, Xiao Tian. Elder Li wants to see you. Hearing the name Elder Li, Yi Tian, who had just been speaking eloquently and directing strategy, felt his breath catch slightly, and his heart skipped a beat. If it were just meeting General Zhang Zhongguo, he could remain calm relying on his confidence from his technological contribution. But meeting the elder who often appeared in the news, as a Washa person across two lives, that ingrained sense of awe was impossible to erase. Yes, Yi Tian was actually a transmigrator. In his previous life, he was an enthusiast obsessed with Minecraft redstone engineering. In his dictionary, villagers were not people, they were trading machines. Iron golems were not protectors, they were white zombies. Exploiting villagers, mass slaughtering monsters via assembly lines, and industrializing the entire world, that was the correct way to play Minecraft. 18 years ago, he transmigrated into this parallel world. Everything here, history, culture, technology, was almost identical to Earth in his previous life. Only one thing was missing. The game Minecraft did not exist. This led to an extremely boring childhood for Yi Tian. Without blocks and without redstone, he felt life had lost its color. It wasn't until 3 days ago that he awakened his system and gained a real Minecraft world. Initially, he considered being a lone adventurer, relying on his immortality to roam the another world. Reality, however, gave him a harsh slap. Without the support of powerful mods, he possessed a zombie and was hacked to death, and possessed Xiaobai and was shot dead. Whoosh! Yi Tian took a deep breath, suppressing the anxiety in his heart. Since he had already come this far, there was nothing to fear. I have the world, and the nation has the power. This is a mutually beneficial win-win situation. Let's go, Uncle Zhang. Yi Tian regained his composure and followed Zhang Zhongguo out of the secret room that had changed their destiny. Meanwhile, in the capital core zone, inside a conference room currently at the highest alert level. The air seemed to have solidified, with only the faint whirring of the projector audible. The huge screen had just finished playing all the dialogue and footage of Yi Tian and Zhang Zhongguo in the secret room, including the astonishing villager possession experiment. 7 or 8 elders sat around the conference table. Every one of them was a figure whose mere stomp could shake all of Washa, and even the world. But at this moment, these elders, who normally wouldn't flinch even if Mount Tai collapsed before them, were all, without exception, filled with undisguised shock. The entire nation ascending, everyone like a dragon. An elder wearing a Chinese tunic suit took off his glasses and wiped the lenses with a trembling hand, his voice shaking slightly from excitement. Has something that only exists in myths and legends truly been presented before us? A veteran general in a military uniform next to him slammed the table, his eyes bursting with sharp light. What's impossible about it? We saw the block creation and the consciousness transfer with our own eyes. This is genuine supernatural power. If we can truly obtain cultivation methods from that another world, allowing our Washa soldiers to withstand missiles with their bare bodies, and granting our Washa people a lifespan of 500 years, then our Washa will completely transcend the nations of the Blue Star. At that time, any Eagle Kun's aircraft carrier blockade or Western technological sanctions will be nothing but a joke. Which country would dare to bully our Washa? The atmosphere in the conference room was instantly ignited. This is not a simple increase in national strength, it is a leap in civilizational level. It is the first step in the true sense, leading the entire Chinese nation to step out of the Blue Star and conquer the heavens. Old Li, sitting in the head seat, remained silent. His hands were crossed on the table, and his deep gaze was fixed on the young figure on the screen. After a long while, he slowly stood up. As he moved, all discussion in the conference room instantly ceased, and everyone looked toward this pillar of strength. This is a crisis, but even more so, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Old Li's voice was not loud, but it carried an air of decisive resolution. Pass on my orders. Swish. The confidential secretary responsible for recording immediately stood up. First, immediately activate the highest-level national mobilization order, codename, Tianmen Project. This matter is classified as top secret among top secrets. The confidentiality level is raised to SSS grade. Those informed are limited to everyone present and the specific executors. Second, command the 5 great military regions to immediately begin secretly selecting Special Forces members who are politically qualified and possess outstanding military aptitude, sign a death contract, and place them under complete lockdown management. Tell them they will be performing a mission they might not return from, but one that is worthy of being recorded in history. Third, command the Chinese Academy of Sciences and the Military Industry Group to immediately transfer all top experts in relevant fields, regardless of the projects they are working on. All must be suspended. Immediately gather at the Starry Sky base. I want them to produce the block weapon plan mentioned by Comrade Yi Tian within 3 days. A series of 3 commands, each one capable of turning the outside world upside down. After issuing the commands, Old Li sat down again, his gaze softening as he looked at Yi Tian on the screen, sighing. Also, when Comrade Little Yi arrives, I want to personally pour him a cup of tea. The surrounding elders were stunned for a moment, then nodded knowingly, revealing approving smiles. Possessing such a heaven-defying opportunity, he not only chose not to conceal it or use his power for evil, but instead chose to trust the country immediately, sharing this opportunity capable of dominating the world with the nation. Old Li said earnestly. This shows that in this child's bones flows the blood of our Yanwang descendants, a heart of pure innocence. Such a young person is a blessing for our country. We cannot let him feel disappointed, nor can we let him suffer losses. Since he has entrusted his back to the nation must be his strongest support. Let's go. Old Li adjusted his collar, a kind and expectant smile appearing on his face. Let us go meet this little meritorious official who is about to lead Huaxia civilization to soar. The engine of the Hongqi sedan emitted a low, steady roar, slowly carrying Yi Tian away from the deep mountain basin toward the center of power. Outside the car window, the night was deep, and occasionally, the brilliant lights on the city's edge could be seen in the distance. Yi Tian leaned back on the soft leather seat, looking at the tranquil night scenery through the bulletproof glass. The nerves that had been tense all day finally relaxed completely. He let out a long breath, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously turned up slightly. This feeling is really great. When he worked alone before, he not only had to think about building machines and synthesizing equipment, but also had to attack the another world himself, and even had headaches figuring out how to command those wooden-headed MC Bio. That feeling of helplessness, of being both father and mother, had made him doubt life itself several times at the resurrection point. But now, things were different. With the nation providing a safety net, many things didn't require him to do them himself. Resource integration is handled by the National Development and Reform Commission, tactics are formulated by the staff headquarters, charging into battle is done by the Special Forces, and technological research is done by the Chinese Academy of Sciences. He only needed to be the key-holding opener of the door. Only by relying on such a behemoth is one qualified to talk about conquering the heavens. Yi Tian watched the receding shadows of the trees outside the window, filled with emotion. But what he didn't know was that at the very moment he was sighing about the peaceful years, due to Old Li's 3 commands, the entire land of Huaxia was already in complete turmoil. Southwest Military Region, a certain Ace Special Operations Brigade garrison. 2:15 a.m. In the deep mountains, the rain poured down heavily. It should have been the deepest sleeping time of the day, but the piercing Level 1 combat readiness alarm sliced through the night sky, echoing throughout the entire camp. Toot, toot, toot. In less than 3 minutes. On the rain-drenched parade ground, 2,000 fully armed soldiers stood densely packed. No one spoke, no one moved. Allowing the icy rain to stream from their steel helmets down their necks, everyone stood like sculptures cast in steel. The brigade commander stood on the reviewing platform, clutching a red document that had just been printed and was still warm. His hand was trembling slightly, not from the cold, but because of the SSS grade top secret classification on the document, codename, Prairie Fire. Soldiers. The brigade commander's voice penetrated the curtain of rain, hoarse and fervent. Just now, the military commission issued the highest directive. The nation requires a death squad, a team willing to risk their lives to carry out an unprecedented mission. This mission may have no support, may not be recorded in archives, and may even face terrifying enemies you cannot comprehend. Speaking of this, the brigade commander suddenly waved his hand, and several political commissars behind him quickly stepped forward, moving several large iron boxes. The boxes opened. Inside were not ammunition, but thick stacks of the highest top secret confidentiality agreement, and will special paper. The superiors have said this mission is entirely voluntary. Those who are afraid of death, or thinking of their wives and children, can step out now and return to the barracks to sleep. I won't blame you. But if you stay, sign this agreement for me. Sign it, and you will no longer belong to yourselves, or even to this world. You will become the nation's ghosts, carving out a bloody path for Washa. Dead silence. A full 3 seconds of dead silence. Immediately after, a young private standing in the front row suddenly stepped forward and roared. Always ready. This single shout seemed to ignite a powder keg. Always ready. Always ready. The roars of 2,000 iron-blooded men drowned out the thunder and rain filling the sky. No one retreated, no one hesitated. They lined up, using the faint light of the searchlights to heavily press their red handprints onto the agreement that could determine life or death. The bright red ink pad spread out in the rainwater, closely resembling the passionate blood they were about to shed. Northwest Military Region's Mad Wolf Heavy Armor Exercise Ground. Strong winds carried yellow sand, beating against the cold armor plates. This was China's most desolate Gobi Desert, and also where China's sharpest fangs were honed. Rumble. The earth trembled. It wasn't an earthquake, but an entire heavy armored combined arms brigade conducting a night raid. Hundreds of Type 99A main battle tanks, like a river of steel beasts, gleamed with a chilling light under the moonlight. Suddenly, a piercing red flare ascended into the sky. Through the communication channel, Brigade Commander Lei Zhan's almost roaring voice came through. All brigade, listen up. Exercise terminated, repeat, exercise terminated. All the tanks braked abruptly, their tracks kicking up a sky full of dust. The tank commanders emerged from their turrets, looking bewildered. The exercise had just begun, so why did it stop? But this was only the beginning. The next second, Lei Zhan's voice became unprecedentedly serious, even with a hint of tremor. Receiving Military Commission's Prairie Fire Order No. 1, the entire brigade is to immediately enter Level 1 combat readiness. Target: Starlight Top Secret Base. Mission nature: Annihilation Battle. As this order was given, the previously somewhat noisy radio channel instantly fell silent. Immediately after, logistics support vehicles rushed forward. This time, what they unloaded were no longer blank rounds for exercises, nor training rounds with gunpowder but no warheads. Instead, they were heavy boxes of fin-stabilized discarding sabot armor-piercing rounds, high-explosive fragmentation rounds, and even special incendiary rounds that hadn't been used for decades, all marked with striking black and yellow stripes. A young loader held a cold artillery shell. He looked at the company commander, his voice dry. Company commander, we're loading live ammunition. Who are we fighting? Have the Americans attacked? The company commander, with a scar on his face, slammed the hatch shut, spat out the sand in his mouth, his eyes fierce like a hungry wolf. Who cares who we're fighting? If the higher-ups tell us to load live ammo, it means we're going all out. Listen up, all of you. Write your last wills, tuck them under your tank seats. This mission's secrecy level is SSS. If we don't come back, these will be our last words to our parents. Thousands of iron-blooded men, using the faint light of the tank's internal instruments, were carving the most hasty yet fervent words with pens onto their helmet liners and the tank's inner walls. If I go and do not return, then I do not return. Beijing, Chinese Academy of Sciences High Energy Physics Institute. 3 a.m. The white-haired academician Li had barely slept for 2 hours when he was awakened by an urgent knocking at the door. Outside the door were 2 grim-faced national security personnel. Academician Li, apologies for disturbing you late at night. According to Elder Li's order No. 1, please come with us immediately. Academician Li, putting on his jacket, looked at the identification presented by the other party. He wasn't flustered, merely pushed up his glasses. Where to? My particle collider experiment is supposed to yield results tomorrow. That experiment is suspended. The national security personnel's tone was firm. From now on, all your research projects are sealed. The place you are going to has a topic 10,000 times more important than that. At the same time, in various corners of Beijing, Tsinghua's materials science genius, Peking University's biology doyen, and even several national treasure-level weapon design experts who had lived in seclusion for years, were all secretly awakened that night. They were not told their destination, nor their return date. They were only told one sentence. The nation needs you to decipher a brand new world. In the coaster special vehicle heading to the airport, dozens of China's top brains gathered. The atmosphere, which had initially been filled with complaints and confusion, instantly turned into a deathly silence after a document with no text, only a few blurry photos, was circulated. Immediately after, there was heavy breathing, and those pairs of eyes that suddenly lit up in the darkness, filled with curiosity and madness. Beijing Northern Vehicle Research Institute. 3:45 a.m. The conference room door was roughly pushed open. A group of old men in white lab coats with messy hair were arguing heatedly, with scattered blueprints all over the table. Seated at the head was Elder Sun, the chief designer of China's king of land warfare, already 70 years old. He was roaring into the phone, saliva flying. Nonsense, absolutely preposterous. Who gave the order? To make me modify the 99A's cockpit. And to remove all the steering wheels and joysticks. Change the fire control system's trigger to a pressure-sensitive plate. And expand the internal space of the turret by 3 times, to fit what? You said to fit a 2-meter-tall block person. Elder Sun angrily slammed the blueprint onto the table. I build tanks, not transformers. What kind of creature has block hands? How can it operate complex fire control panels without fingers? This is an insult to mechanical engineering. However, the person on the other end of the phone only said one sentence. Elder Sun, who had been furious, suddenly quieted down. It was Elder Li who called personally, and he only said one sentence. Old Sun, this is for China to secure a foundation for 10,000 generations. This tank is meant to drive into mythology and drive out China's future. Elder Sun fell silent. After a full minute, he abruptly hung up the phone, turned around, and an unprecedented glint burst forth from his previously cloudy old eyes. Stop arguing, all of you. Elder Sun slapped the table, making the teacups jump. All project teams, listen up. The original lightweighting plan is completely void. Bring me new blueprints. Since the driver has no fingers, install a neural connection slot in the driver's seat. Since they have block hands, change the joysticks to embedded sockets, so their arms can directly plug into the tank to control it. And, since we don't need to consider the driver's physical endurance. Elder Sun's face showed a hint of mad laughter. Replace the engine with nuclear power, and thicken the armor by 5 times. Elder Sun pointed to the removed radiation shielding lead layer on the blueprint. On Earth, we didn't dare build nuclear-powered tanks because, to protect the fragile human body, we needed to carry 60 tons of radiation shielding lead plates, which made the tank immobile. But now, Elder Sun's eyes gleamed with fervor. Our drivers are not human, they don't need radiation shielding. We can replace all this 60-ton weight allowance with depleted uranium armor and electromagnetic reactive armor. Moreover, as long as the heat dissipation problem is solved, this miniature nuclear reactor can provide hundreds of thousands of horsepower. This means that even if this tank weighs 200 tons, it can still achieve the speed of a Ferrari. This isn't a tank, it's a land cruiser. Inside the red flag car, Yi Tian didn't know how many people were moving for him at this very moment. The car smoothly passed through the heavily guarded gate. Zhang Zhongguo looked at the rows of heavily armed guards outside the window, whose sentry posts had clearly tripled, then turned to Yi Tian and spoke softly. Xiao Tian, we've arrived. You must feel it too, right? This enormous state apparatus has already warmed up for you. The Huasha of today is like a fully drawn, taut bow. Zhang Zhongguo pointed toward the solemn and dignified conference room ahead, his eyes filled with pride. And you are the one responsible for firing the arrow. Yi Tian pushed open the car door, and the night wind swept across his cheek. He adjusted his collar, took a deep breath, and his gaze became firmer than ever before. If there was a trace of apprehension before, at this moment, feeling the entire nation supporting him, all hesitation vanished into thin air. Since the nation treats me as a national scholar, I shall repay it as a national scholar. Yi Tian took a step forward, meeting the gaze of the elders, and walked up with vigorous strides. This step taken was no longer an ordinary meeting. Instead, it was a turning point in the history of two worlds, two civilizations, and even the myriad heavens and 10,000 realms. Passing through the Vermilion Gate symbolizing the highest authority of Huasha, there were no strict barriers as imagined, only a few streetlights emitting a soft glow. Yi Tian followed Zhang Zhongguo into a simply furnished conference room. The red carpet underfoot was somewhat worn, and the famous painting such as the beauty of the landscape hung on the wall. The air was filled with a faint scent of ink and tobacco. The moment Yi Tian stepped through the door, the elders who had been sitting on the sofa talking all stood up simultaneously. If outside news media were to witness this scene, it would be enough to shock the world. These were figures who, with a single stomp of their feet, could make global geopolitics tremble. Yet at this moment, they were greeting an 18-year-old youth with the posture of equals, or even honored guests. The elder standing in the center wore a faded Zhongshan suit, his face kind, but his eyes held the wisdom of one who comprehends the world. He was the current elder Li Yuanming. Gr. Yi Tian was just about to salute using the formal address from the news, but his hand was grasped by a pair of warm, strong hands. Li Yuanming held Yi Tian's hand, looking him up and down, the smile in his eyes almost overflowing, as if he were looking at his own most promising junior. Since you call Zhongguo, uncle, if you don't mind this old man, just call me Elder Li. This simple change in address instantly set the tone. Here, there were no superiors and subordinates, only family. Elder Li. Yi Tian didn't mince words and called out readily. Good child. Li Yuanming pulled Yi Tian to sit on the sofa, not rushing to discuss official business, but personally pouring Yi Tian a cup of hot tea. This tea isn't some special supply, it's rough tea I fried myself back in my hometown. Have a taste, it'll relieve your fatigue. Afterward, Li Yuanming retracted his smile, his expression becoming solemn. He looked at Yi Tian, his tone sincere. Xiao Tian, everything you said to Zhongguo in the car just now, and everything you demonstrated at the base, we have seen it all. To be honest, even we, who have one foot in the grave, were startled, but more than that, we felt fortunate. Li Yuanming pointed toward the deep night sky outside the window. We are fortunate that heaven blesses our Huasha, sending down a Qilin child like you in this great era of competition. What we are even more fortunate about is that your heart is righteous, and you chose to trust the nation immediately. The nation will absolutely not betray this trust. Speaking of this, Li Yuanming picked up a newly signed and sealed red-headed document from the table and solemnly handed it to Yi Tian with both hands. After discussion by our committee, we have decided to officially appoint you as the Director General of the Starry Sky Strategic Development Bureau, concurrently serving as the Chief Commander of the Myriad Heavens Expeditionary Force. Regarding the Starry Sky Base and future and other world development affairs, you possess the absolute right of veto. Whether it's mobilizing the military, allocating resources, or establishing scientific research projects, there's no need for layer-by-layer approval, you decide. Zhang Zhongguo will be your deputy from now on, specifically responsible for running errands and handling logistics for you. Yi Tian accepted the document. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still moved by the weight of this authority. This was not just power, it was the nation entrusting its very existence into his hands. Seeming to have discerned Yi Tian's thoughts, Li Yuanming waved his hand and continued. Don't feel pressured. Aside from these nominal titles, if you have any requirements regarding your daily life, just state them. I know young people dislike being restrained. Therefore, the nation will not limit your freedom, nor will it assign people to watch you like a prisoner. However, Li Yuanming changed the subject, his tone revealing a sense of dominance. Your safety is now the nation's highest secret. To guard against foreign powers or accidents, we will arrange a shadow squad, responsible only for perimeter security, absolutely not interfering with your private life. Also, you don't have a residence in the capital yet, do you? The Chishan villa not far from the Starry Sky base, which has a tranquil environment, has been transferred to your name. If your parents and relatives are unwilling to move, the local government will secretly look after them. If they wish to come to the capital, you can choose the best resources for jobs, household registration, and schools. In a word, Li Yuanming looked into Yi Tian's eyes and said deliberately, word by word. You open up new territories for Washa on the front lines, and the nation will resolve all your worries on the home front. You give the nation a future, and the nation guarantees your prosperity for generations. These words were spoken openly and frankly. There was no exaggeration, only concrete, genuine promises. There was the delegation of authority, material security, and humanistic care. Thank you, Elder Li. Yi Tian nodded, his eyes clear. If the nation does not fail me, I shall certainly not fail the nation. Haha, good. Don't be so serious. Li Yuanming laughed heartily and looked at the wall clock. It's almost 4 o'clock. After being busy all night, your stomach must be rumbling, right? Come, join us old men for a meal. The dining room was right next door. There was no Manchu Han imperial feast as one might imagine, nor any rare delicacies. On the round table were steaming millet porridge, several plates of crisp pickled vegetables, and 2 large platters of freshly steamed pork and scallion buns. Come, come, eat while it's hot. The elders, usually so imposing, were now like kindly grandfathers from next door, continuously placing buns into Yi Tian's bowl. Xiao Tian, where are you from? Are you used to university life? Do you like the food in the cafeteria? If you're not used to it, we'll have the master chef go to your university cafeteria to offer some guidance later. At the dinner table, everyone tacitly avoided discussing heavy national affairs and instead chatted about everyday life. Yi Tian smiled and answered the elders' concerns while biting into a bun that was oozing juice. This warm atmosphere made him feel momentarily as if he wasn't dining with a national leader, but rather enjoying a reunion dinner back home for the new year. This sense of life and warmth was more touching than any medal. The meal lasted for over half an hour. Only when Yi Tian let out a satisfied burp did Li Yuanming put down his chopsticks. Alright, that's enough for today. Health is the capital of revolution, and you certainly haven't slept well these past few days. Zhongguo, take Xiao Tian back to rest. Li Yuanming instructed. No matter how urgent things are tonight, don't disturb him. Let him get a good night's sleep. 4:30 a.m. The red flag sedan once again drove into the night. This time, the motorcade drove directly towards the scenic and heavily secured Qishan villa. Inside the car, Zhongguo looked at Yi Tian beside him. Xiao Tian, we're here. Zhongguo opened the car door for Yi Tian. Looking at the quiet small building before them, he lowered his voice, yet could not hide the excitement in his tone. Please rest well. I just received news that the first batch of scientific researchers has finished gathering at the Starry Sky base. The experts are frighteningly efficient. You'll know the specific surprise when you see it on site tomorrow. Zhongguo took a deep breath and looked up at the eastern horizon, where dawn was about to break. There, a morning star shone brightly, signaling the imminent sunrise. He turned his head, gave Yi Tian a standard military salute, his voice filled with trembling anticipation. Good night, Chief Commander. When the sun rises tomorrow, that will be the moment our sleeping giant dragon officially opens its eyes. Looking at Zhongguo's figure, which was tired yet held perfectly straight, a warm feeling surged in Yi Tian's heart. The corner of his mouth lifted, and he returned an equally standard and powerful military salute. Good night, Uncle Zhong. The two men exchanged a look, and then burst into hearty laughter. Ha 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 ha. The laughter carried far into the pre-dawn darkness, representing the shared anticipation between two men, and more so, between two generations, for the great era that was about to arrive. Yi Tian watched the red flag sedan slowly drive away until its taillights vanished around the mountain road corner before he finally turned around. At this moment, a tall young man in a black suit was already waiting nearby. He was about 30 years old with a crew cut and sharp eyes. Although dressed in civilian clothes, the characteristic fierce aura of a special forces soldier was impossible to hide. Seeing Yi Tian look over, the young man immediately stepped forward, bowed slightly, his tone respectful but not subservient. Director, hello. My name is Qi Ming. I am the head steward of this Qishan villa and also your security team leader. From now on, I will be responsible for your daily life, security, and protection here. Please feel free to give instructions if you need anything. Yi Tian nodded and said gently. All right, Brother Qi, I'll be relying on you. Hearing the address, Brother Qi, a look of surprise flashed across Qi Ming's serious face, and he quickly waved his hand. Director, that title is too much for me. By the rules, you should just call me by my name or Xiao Qi. Oh, why so many rules? Yi Tian waved his hand, interrupting him, and said casually while walking into the courtyard. Since the state arranged for you to be here, we will be comrades living together day and night. I plan to live here permanently. Since you're a full cycle older than me, calling you Brother Qi is proper, unless you look down on a director like me who only knows how to talk. Your subordinate wouldn't dare. Qi Ming felt a warmth in his heart, and his back instantly straightened even further. Yes, director. He looked at Yi Tian's slightly slender back and nodded internally. This young chief is highly placed and influential, yet completely unpretentious. He's someone easy to get along with. No wonder General Zhang holds him in such high regard. This Qishan villa truly lives up to its status as a top-tier residence arranged by the state. It lacked the ostentatious splendor of a nouveau riche estate, replaced instead by a kind of understated luxury. Inside the courtyard, green pines and cypresses, rockeries, and flowing water were arranged tastefully. Walking inside, the complete set of Chinese rosewood furniture emitted a faint fragrance, and the calligraphy and paintings hanging on the walls were genuine works by masters. Seemingly rustic, it was actually full of hidden mechanisms, bulletproof glass, a constant temperature system, and an independent satellite network. This was a steel fortress disguised as a private residence. Nice environment. Yi Tian nodded in satisfaction, dismissed Qi Ming, who had offered to draw a bath, and went alone to the master bedroom on the second floor. Closing the door, the world instantly fell silent. The nerves that had been taut for a day and a night finally relaxed completely at this moment. Yi Tian sprawled out, throwing himself heavily onto the soft, large bed. He stared blankly at the ceiling for a few seconds, then a thought crossed his mind. Swoosh. A pale blue, translucent light screen, visible only to him, instantly appeared before his eyes. Heaven's Conquest System. Host. Yi Tian. Current main quest. First battle victory. Mission objective. Occupy and establish a stable extra-dimensional base target plane. Tier 1 zombie virus plane. Current progress. 0%. Mission rewards preview. Tier 1 perfect gene evolution potion X1 after consumption. All attributes increase 5 times, and grants primary psionic power. Mass-produced Type 1 body enhancement fluid formula can significantly improve the physical quality of citizens, soldiers and grant immunity to common viruses. Complete blueprint for high-energy biopolymer battery technology, epoch-making energy storage technology. 10x smaller volume, 10x greater capacity. Looking at the rewards on the mission panel, he had previously thought that relying solely on resources from the Minecraft world could facilitate infrastructure, but the technological advancement for the real world would lean heavily towards materials science. But now, the mission rewards provided by the system were practically tailor-made for the current predicament. Yi Tian rubbed his chin, starting to calculate in his mind. This perfect gene serum perfectly solves the problem of my weak main body. Right now, I'm like a squishy mage. Although I can control puppets, if my main body gets ambushed, I'm finished. With this, combined with primary psionic power, I can better control creatures via multi-threading control of creatures. As for this Type 1 enhancement fluid formula, a smile curled at Yi Tian's lips. If I give this to Uncle Zhang and Old Li, they'll probably go crazy with joy. Isn't this just a weaker version of the super soldier serum? Once implemented throughout the entire military, the average quality of Washa soldiers will directly crush the global competition. And that high-energy battery technology, that's a treasure. With this bio-battery, the last weakness of power armor, laser weapons, and drone swarms will be resolved. It seems conquering this zombie world is imperative, and I must achieve a perfect rating. After calculating the rewards, Yi Tian took a deep breath and closed his eyes again. This time, his consciousness did not fall asleep. Instead, following that familiar mental pathway, it instantly descended into the Minecraft world. The view shifted, and the ceiling was replaced by the iconic blocky clouds and square sun. At this moment, the Minecraft world was in the early morning. Yi Tian, in observer mode, floated in midair, looking down at the land below. Below him, there were only a few solitary buildings. A simple string farm. And a small 9x9 automatic farm, also deserted. There was also an unfinished iron farm foundation, standing alone on the plains. Looking at these few shabby small workshops, Yi Tian couldn't help but laugh wryly. This is the limit of what I could grind out by myself a few days ago. Exhausting work, yet pitifully inefficient. Because Yi Tian felt that without the ability to control creatures, redstone machines would be useless, and no matter how many there were, they would just be materials. So he didn't put all his effort into building, spending more time risking his life to explore the outside world. When he used to play games, he was a lone wolf player, having to do everything himself. That sense of loneliness and the grind sometimes really made people want to quit. But tomorrow, everything would change. Yi Tian's gaze swept across the vast plains, and the future vision had already appeared in his mind. Tomorrow, there would be thousands of Chinese sappers who had undergone the most rigorous training. Iron farms, gold farms, and guardian farms with millions of efficiency would spring up like mushrooms after rain. Redstone automatic sorting production lines would categorize and archive hundreds of millions of resources. I used to be a struggling redstone player. Yi Tian floated in the air, looking at his territory, and an unprecedented sense of pride surged within him. Starting tomorrow, I will be the owner of the redstone server. This feeling was simply too exhilarating. Yi Tian had originally wanted to go down and finish that abandoned iron farm, but then he remembered that a large army of free labor would arrive tomorrow, so he retracted his outstretched hand. Forget it, no more grinding. Thousands of people entering tomorrow will be much faster than me, why should I stay up late? Yi Tian took one last look at this tranquil blocky world, and with a thought, his consciousness instantly withdrew. In the real world, Qishan Villa. Yi Tian on the bed turned over, a relaxed smile on his lips. The quilt was soft, and the air conditioning temperature was just right. This was the soundest sleep he had had in 18 years since transmigrating. Outside the window, the night was deep. But Yi Tian knew that when the sun rose tomorrow, not only he, but the entire Huaxia, would usher in an earth-shattering awakening. Whoosh! Whoosh! With even breaths, Yi Tian fell into a deep sleep. The next day, when Yi Tian opened his eyes, the sun outside the window had already risen to its zenith. He had slept so soundly, as if to make up for all the fatigue of his past and present lives. After a simple wash, Yi Tian changed into a crisp casual outfit and pushed open the door to the courtyard. Qi Ming, who had been waiting outside, immediately came forward, his expression respectful and efficient. Director, you're awake. Lunch has already been ordered from the kitchen, it's your favorite home-style cooking. Thanks, Brother Qi. Yi Tian stretched, enjoying the warm midday sun of late autumn. Qi Ming reported while leading the way. Oh, Director, General Zhang called earlier. He said he didn't want to disturb your rest, and asked me to take you directly to the Starry Sky base after you woke up. At this point, Qi Ming's tone held a hint of unconcealed awe. General Zhang is currently stationed there. As per your instructions, the first batch of required personnel, supplies, and equipment has all been assembled. Additionally, General Zhang specifically emphasized that a top-tier think tank, approved by Elder Li, has also arrived. General Zhang said that once you're there, feel free to propose any wild ideas you have. Those experts are specifically responsible for turning your ideas into reality. A think tank. Yi Tian nodded slightly upon hearing this, a glint flashing in his eyes. This was exactly what he needed most. There were many black technologies in the Minecraft world that he couldn't utilize alone. For example, bone meal. In the game, bone meal could only be used to accelerate crop growth or turn saplings into large trees. But what if it was brought into reality? If industrial mass production could be achieved, scattering tens of thousands of tons of bone meal over deserts in the Loess Plateau, perhaps within a few days, those deserts that had plagued Huaxia for thousands of years would instantly transform into lush green oases and forests. What kind of heaven-defying strategic significance would this have for the nation's ecology and the red line of cultivated land? In potions, redstone circuits. Yi Tian pondered silently. These things all required professional scientists to analyze and localize. After a hurried lunch, Yi Tian wiped his mouth and stood up. Let's go, Brother Qi, take me to see our new base. Yes, Director. Qi Ming immediately whispered a few words into his earphone. Less than half a minute later, a black Hongqi bulletproof sedan with a special pass steadily stopped at the courtyard gate. Qi Ming personally opened the car door, and after Yi Tian sat in the back seat, he quickly got into the driver's seat and started the vehicle. Boom! The Hongqi car, like a black leopard, drove out of the villa and sped towards the deep mountains northwest of the capital. As the vehicle left the urban area, the surrounding scenery gradually became desolate, and the road became increasingly rugged. But Yi Tian keenly noticed that while there were fewer cars on the road, there were more eyes in the shadows. Every few kilometers, hidden checkpoints could be seen. Later, even armored vehicles with live ammunition could be seen patrolling by the roadside. This was a critical area of the capital, and the hardest shield of Huasha's heart. After about an hour of driving, the convoy arrived at the foot of a majestic mountain. Ahead was a seemingly ordinary checkpoint, but the towering watchtowers and dark machine gun barrels on both sides indicated its unusual nature. Qi Ming rolled down the window, said nothing, and simply handed over a dark gold token. The sentry took the token and swiped it on the obviously modified instrument. Beep. Permission confirmed. SSS rank. The sentry's pupils constricted sharply, and he immediately stood at attention and saluted, his movements flawless, his eyes filled with fervent admiration. Although he didn't know who was in the car, he knew what this token represented, a rank 3 levels higher than an official, as if Elder Li himself had arrived. At the same time, the seemingly dead-end mountain wall ahead slowly split open to both sides with a dull roar. This was actually a giant blast door disguised as a mountain. Director, hold on tight. Qi Ming stepped on the accelerator, and the Hongqi car drove into the deep tunnel. Passing through the tunnel, the scene before them suddenly opened up, and even Yi Tian's pupils contracted slightly. A world of its own. The interior of this large mountain had actually been completely hollowed out. What met the eye was a huge underground domed space, illuminated as bright as day by countless high-power searchlights. Heavy trucks shuttled along wide underground roads, and in the distance, a massive apron could be seen, along with a dedicated railway line leading deep underground. At the very center, a futuristic silver architectural complex rose from the ground, with countless researchers in white coats and fully armed soldiers busily moving through it. This was no mere base, it was clearly a futuristic city hidden deep underground. This is the Starry Sky Base. Yi Tian murmured to himself. Is this the power of the infrastructure maniacs? As soon as the car stopped, Yi Tian saw a familiar figure. Zhang Zhongguo was in military uniform. Although there were red streaks in his eyes, indicating he hadn't slept all night, he was in an extremely excited state. Xiao Tian, you're here. Seeing Yi Tian get out of the car, Zhang Zhongguo strode forward to greet him, sizing him up and down with a smile. Looking at your complexion, you slept well last night. Thanks to Uncle Zhang, I slept soundly. Yi Tian said with a smile, shaking Zhang Zhongguo's hand. That's good, that's good. Zhang Zhongguo patted Yi Tian's shoulder and, without much small talk, led Yi Tian directly towards the silver building, speaking as they walked. Come, let's go to the main conference room first. There's a brief pre-war meeting that you need to preside over. Along the way, Zhang Zhongguo spoke quickly, appearing incredibly efficient. Xiao Tian, Elder Li has issued a death order. Starting today, the Starry Sky Base will officially be upgraded to the nation's highest strategic level base. All national research institutes and military-industrial bases involved in the development of the Another World must unconditionally obey the command of the Starry Sky Base. This means that even if you want a satellite in orbit to change its trajectory, the Aerospace Administration must execute it within 1 minute. Hearing this, Yi Tian's heart tightened. This power was too immense. Zhang Zhongguo continued. Additionally, regarding your previous idea for the block-shaped weapon, the Chinese Academy of Sciences worked through the night and has already produced the first batch of samples. During the meeting later, you should bring up your specific needs in that world, such as what still needs to be modified, what kind of talents are required, everything. The purpose of this meeting is singular. To identify gaps and deficiencies, and then launch a full-scale assault. As for the non-disclosure agreement, Zhang Zhongguo sneered. Don't worry about that. Everyone who enters this base, from academicians to janitors, has had their ancestral lineage traced back 18 generations 3 times over. Here, not even a mosquito can fly out without security clearance. Yi Tian nodded, his expression also becoming serious. Understood, Uncle Zhang. As they spoke, the two had arrived before a heavy metal door. It's inside. Zhang Zhongguo took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Boom. The door slowly opened. The moment Yi Tian stepped inside, a huge wave of sound rushed towards him, then instantly fell silent. It was a massive, tiered conference hall capable of holding thousands of people. At this moment, every seat was taken. Sitting in the front row were dozens of white-haired elders. Yi Tian merely glanced at them and found them familiar. They were figures often seen in textbooks and news, and some he had never seen before. There were founders of China's nuclear physics, chief engineers of manned spaceflight, leading authorities in biological genetics, and national treasure-level experts in light weapon design. In the back rows were uniformed general and staff officers, their golden stars forming a brilliant galaxy. At this moment, these thousands of eyes, representing China's highest intellect and military power, were all focused on the 18-year-old young man at the entrance. That invisible sense of pressure and expectation surged like a mountain roaring and a sea raging. Zhang Zhongguo stood beside Yi Tian and shouted loudly. Everyone, stand up. Swish. Thousands of people stood up in unison, soldiers saluting, scholars looking on attentively. Zhang Zhongguo looked at Yi Tian, made a gesture of invitation, his eyes full of encouragement. Chief Commander, please take your seat. China's top brains and sharpest fangs are awaiting your command. Yi Tian walked with steady steps, ascending the podium bathed in spotlights. The moment he stood firm, his hands resting on the lectern, thousands of gazes from below converged on him as if tangible. Among these people were white-haired nuclear physics grandmasters who had lived in anonymity in the Gobi Desert for decades. There were aerospace chief engineers with temples streaked with gray, who had designed the J-20 fighter jet. There were also iron-blooded generals, bearing stars on their shoulders, who had just rushed back from desert exercises. They were the backbone of China, the nation's most precious asset. Facing such a group of people, Yi Tian felt no nervousness, only immense respect. Whether in his previous ordinary world or this life, which was about to take off, it was precisely because of these people's burden-bearing efforts that there was peace and tranquility in countless homes. Yi Tian took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and his voice, transmitted clearly through the amplifier throughout the vast conference hall, was steady and powerful. Good afternoon, respected seniors and leaders. Welcome to the Starry Sky Base. Yi Tian did not rush to drop a bombshell, but slowly scanned the entire hall with his gaze. I believe everyone here must be full of questions right now. Why are biologists sitting with nuclear physicists? Why are tank builders gathered with researchers of individual exoskeletons? Why have elites from various military regions been urgently dispatched here overnight? You are all intelligent people. Looking at this even somewhat eclectic top-tier lineup, you should have guessed. Yi Tian paused, then his voice suddenly rose. The nation is facing a major crisis. The hall was silent, but everyone's backs straightened further. You could have peacefully conducted research in your respective fields and enjoyed your honors. But when that transfer order was issued, when the words, "the nation needs you," echoed in your ears, you didn't ask about your return date, you didn't ask for reasons, and you came here without hesitation. This is the backbone of China, and this is precisely why I dare to stand here and assign this mission to you. At this point, Yi Tian glanced at Zhang Zhongguo beside him. Zhang Zhongguo understood and waved his hand. Hundreds of guards quickly entered, distributing tightly sealed red confidential folders to each participant's table. Yi Tian's voice became serious and cold. Ladies and gentlemen, before you is a top-level secret agreement, SSS-level classified. This is not an ordinary document. Once signed, your names may completely disappear from academia and society. The rest of your lives may be spent in this underground base, and even your contributions may not be known to the world for a long time to come. The upcoming project involves the future destiny of China, and whether our nation can truly rise above all realms. Heavy trucks shuttled along wide underground roads, and in the distance, a massive apron could be seen, along with a dedicated railway line leading deep underground. At the very center, a futuristic silver architectural complex rose from the ground, with countless researchers in white coats and fully armed soldiers busily moving through it. This was no mere base, it was clearly a futuristic city hidden deep underground. This is the Starry Sky Base. Yi Tian murmured to himself. Is this the power of the infrastructure maniacs? As soon as the car stopped, Yi Tian saw a familiar figure. Zhang Zhongguo was in military uniform. Although there were red streaks in his eyes, indicating he hadn't slept all night, he was in an extremely excited state. Xiao Tian, you're here. Seeing Yi Tian get out of the car, Zhang Zhongguo strode forward to greet him, sizing him up and down with a smile. Looking at your complexion, you slept well last night. Thanks to Uncle Zhang, I slept soundly. Yi Tian said with a smile, shaking Zhang Zhongguo's hand. That's good, that's good. Zhang Zhongguo patted Yi Tian's shoulder and, without much small talk, led Yi Tian directly towards the silver building, speaking as they walked. Come, let's go to the main conference room first. There's a brief pre-war meeting that you need to preside over. Along the way, Zhang Zhongguo spoke quickly, appearing incredibly efficient. Xiao Tian, Elder Li has issued a death order. Starting today, the Starry Sky Base will officially be upgraded to the nation's highest strategic level base. All national research institutes and military-industrial bases involved in the development of the Another World must unconditionally obey the command of the Starry Sky Base. This means that even if you want a satellite in orbit to change its trajectory, the Aerospace Administration must execute it within 1 minute. Hearing this, Yi Tian's heart tightened. This power was too immense. Zhang Zhongguo continued. Additionally, regarding your previous idea for the block-shaped weapon, the Chinese Academy of Sciences worked through the night and has already produced the first batch of samples. During the meeting later, you should bring up your specific needs in that world, such as what still needs to be modified, what kind of talents are required, everything. The purpose of this meeting is singular, to identify gaps and deficiencies, and then launch a full-scale assault. As for the non-disclosure agreement, Zhang Zhongguo sneered. Don't worry about that. Everyone who enters this base, from academicians to janitors, has had their ancestral lineage traced back 18 generations 3 times over. Here, not even a mosquito can fly out without security clearance. Yi Tian nodded, his expression also becoming serious. Understood, Uncle Zhang. As they spoke, the two had arrived before a heavy metal door. It's inside. Zhang Zhongguo took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Boom. The door slowly opened. The moment Yi Tian stepped inside, a huge wave of sound rushed towards him, then instantly fell silent. It was a massive, tiered conference hall capable of holding thousands of people. At this moment, every seat was taken. Sitting in the front row were dozens of white-haired elders. Yi Tian merely glanced at them and found them familiar. They were figures often seen in textbooks and news, and some he had never seen before. There were founders of China's nuclear physics, chief engineers of manned spaceflight, leading authorities in biological genetics, and national treasure-level experts in light weapon design. In the back rows were uniformed general and staff officers, their golden stars forming a brilliant galaxy. At this moment, these thousands of eyes, representing China's highest intellect and military power, were all focused on the 18-year-old young man at the entrance. That invisible sense of pressure and expectation surged like a mountain roaring and a sea raging. Zhang Zhongguo stood beside Yi Tian and shouted loudly. Everyone, stand up. Swish. Thousands of people stood up in unison, soldiers saluting, scholars looking on attentively. Zhang Zhongguo looked at Yi Tian, made a gesture of invitation, his eyes full of encouragement. Chief Commander, please take your seat. China's top brains and sharpest fangs are awaiting your command. Yi Tian walked with steady steps, ascending the podium bathed in spotlights. The moment he stood firm, his hands resting on the lectern, thousands of gazes from below converged on him as if tangible. Among these people were white-haired nuclear physics grandmasters who had lived in anonymity in the Gobi Desert for decades. There were aerospace chief engineers with temples streaked with gray, who had designed the J-20 fighter jet. There were also iron-blooded generals, bearing stars on their shoulders, who had just rushed back from desert exercises. They were the backbone of China, the nation's most precious asset. Facing such a group of people, Yi Tian felt no nervousness, only immense respect. Whether in his previous ordinary world or this life, which was about to take off, it was precisely because of these people's burden-bearing efforts that there was peace and tranquility in countless homes. Yi Tian took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and his voice, transmitted clearly through the amplifier throughout the vast conference hall, was steady and powerful. Good afternoon, respected seniors and leaders. Welcome to the Starry Sky Base. Yi Tian did not rush to drop a bombshell, but slowly scanned the entire hall with his gaze. I believe everyone here must be full of questions right now. Why are biologists sitting with nuclear physicists? Why are tank builders gathered with researchers of individual exoskeletons? Why have elites from various military regions been urgently dispatched here overnight? You are all intelligent people. Looking at this even somewhat eclectic top-tier lineup, you should have guessed. Yi Tian paused, then his voice suddenly rose. The nation is facing a major crisis. The hall was silent, but everyone's backs straightened further. You could have peacefully conducted research in your respective fields and enjoyed your honors. But when that transfer order was issued, when the words, "the nation needs you," echoed in your ears, you didn't ask about your return date, you didn't ask for reasons, and you came here without hesitation. This is the backbone of China, and this is precisely why I dare to stand here and assign this mission to you. At this point, Yi Tian glanced at Zhang Zhongguo beside him. Zhang Zhongguo understood and waved his hand. Hundreds of guards quickly entered, distributing tightly sealed red confidential folders to each participant's table. Yi Tian's voice became serious and cold. Ladies and gentlemen, before you is a top-level secret agreement, SSS level classified. This is not an ordinary document. Once signed, your names may completely disappear from academia and society. The rest of your lives may be spent in this underground base, and even your contributions may not be known to the world for a long time to come. The upcoming project involves the future destiny of China, and whether our nation can truly rise above all realms. After saying this, Yi Tian fell silent, merely gazing calmly at the audience below. He was waiting. Waiting for someone to hesitate, for someone to withdraw, or even for someone to question. However, within the vast conference hall, there was no sound. No whispering, no murmuring. No one even bothered to look at the specific terms of the agreement. Rustle, rustle, rustle. Rustle, rustle, rustle. In the air, only the scratching sound of pens on paper remained. The sound was dense and hurried, like a silent spring rain nourishing this red land. In less than a minute, thousands of agreements were all signed. Zhang Zhongguo looked at the documents collected by the guards and nodded heavily at Yi Tian. Everyone signed, no one withdrew. Very good. A flicker of emotion crossed Yi Tian's eyes, then his gaze became sharp as a blade. Since you are all prepared, please steady your minds now. Because what I am about to show you may overturn your lifelong understanding. Yi Tian turned and snapped his fingers. The huge holographic projection screen behind him instantly lit up. There were no complex charts, the screen only displayed a few simple, crude characters, like burning flames. Conquering the myriad worlds. Boom. Although they were mentally prepared, when they clearly saw these 4 characters, a wave of uncontrollable uproar instantly erupted below the stage. Myriad worlds. What does that mean? Is it parallel universes? Conquer. Are we going to wage war? Against whom? Yi Tian pressed his hands down, signaling for silence, then threw out an even more astonishing fact. A few days ago, I awakened a special ability. I obtained an independent world, which I call MC. There are infinite resources there, unique rules, but most importantly, there is a door, a portal connecting to endless alternate dimensions. The screen changed, displaying a video extracted from Yi Tian's memory. A gloomy sky, ruined cityscapes, and an endless, roaring, terrifying tide of corpses, as well as mutated zombies with immense strength that could easily tear apart tanks. This is our first target, the zombie virus dimension. Watching the hellish scenes in the video, many scientists' faces turned pale. But in the eyes of the generals, a fierce fighting spirit ignited. That world is very dangerous. Yi Tian pointed at the screen, changing his tone. However, we possess an absolute advantage. The Minecraft world I possess is a special dimension composed of blocks. In that world, there is a unique mechanism, consciousness descent. We can use technological means to imbue the consciousness of our soldiers into the indigenous creatures of the Minecraft world, which means. Yi Tian looked at the gasping generals below and said, word by word. Our soldiers will participate in the war as undead players. Their physical bodies will sleep in the base, while their souls will conquer in another world. Even if they die in that world, they will be unharmed in reality, only needing a few days of rest to return to the battlefield. Undead Legion. A white-haired old general suddenly stood up, trembling with excitement. Chief Commander, is what you said true? Can we really achieve zero casualties? Absolutely true. Yi Tian nodded affirmingly. But this is also why I have gathered you all here. The screen changed again, displaying creatures from the Minecraft world. Slender Endermen who can teleport and move blocks. Iron golems, covered in steel armor and possessing immense strength. Creepers, capable of self-detonation with astonishing power. These are the new bodies our soldiers will be using. Yi Tian pointed at these blocky creatures, smiling wryly. They are strong, possessing various extraordinary characteristics, but they have a fatal flaw: they are made of blocks. They don't have fingers to pull modern triggers. Their bodies are oddly shaped, unable to fit into modern tank cockpits. Although they possess immense strength, they can only fight with the most primitive cold weapons. Yi Tian looked intently at the military industry experts below the stage. Therefore, I need you. I need the arms industry group to produce automatic rifles and heavy machine guns suitable for blocky hands. I need the Northern Vehicle Research Institute to transform our tanks into land cruisers capable of being driven by 3-meter-tall iron golems within a week. I need the Air Force Design Institute to design an air-to-ground missile system that can be mounted on Phantoms. I want these blocky creatures to be equipped with Washa's most cutting-edge killing techniques, to crush the heads of those zombies with a steel torrent. These words stirred the blood of the audience. Old Sun and others, who had originally thought modifying guns and tanks was nonsense, now had no doubt in their eyes, replaced by an insane desire for scientific research. Building equipment for undead creatures. This was too exciting. But, Chief Commander. At this moment, an academician from the School of Biology raised his hand to ask a question, his brows tightly furrowed. What else can we gain by going to such great lengths to attack a zombie world full of viruses, other than training the army? If it's just for slaughter, isn't the cost? Good question. Yi Tian interrupted him, a glint flashing in his eyes. Although the blueprints hadn't arrived yet, he knew what the system mission rewards were, and now was the time to paint a grand vision for everyone. We are not for slaughter, we are for evolution. Yi Tian waved his hand, and some blurry concept images appeared on the screen. According to my preliminary reconnaissance of that world, although the zombie virus there is terrifying, it also contains the ultimate code for biological evolution. That world possesses high-energy biopolymer battery technology, which can completely solve the energy problem of our exoskeleton armor. More importantly, as long as we capture it and establish a stable base, I am confident that I can extract a mass-producible Type 1 enhancement fluid from the rules of that world. That is a gene agent that can double the physique of ordinary soldiers and immunize them against most diseases. Upon hearing the words, enhancement fluid, the biologists and generals below instantly stopped breathing. Everyone like a dragon. Super soldiers. All of this is not yet in our hands. Yi Tian looked at their fanatical eyes and said coldly. They are behind that door, in the brains of those zombies, in the rules of that world. If we don't conquer, if we don't plunder, they will forever remain empty talk. So, Yi Tian slammed the podium. I need you to first build up our home world. Now, let's distribute the tasks. Staff headquarters, immediately match the abilities of Special Forces soldiers from various military regions based on the biological data I provide. Determine who is suitable to be an assassin, who is suitable to be a tank, who is suitable to be a sniper, and come up with a plan. Engineering Corps, prepare your infrastructure equipment. After the meeting, I will open the portal. The first batch of 3,000 people will enter the Minecraft world with me. Once we're there, we must first build mob spawner tower and fully automatic farms. Food and fodder go before troops and horses. We must transform that world into an unbreakable, unyielding strategic rear for war. Once our base is built, once our block guns are manufactured. Yi Tian's eyes were filled with murderous intent. With a wave of his hand, he pointed at the terrifying zombie horde on the screen. That will be the time for our great Washa army to descend upon another world and reap the spoils of war. Everyone. Yi Tian sharply saluted, his voice echoing through the sky. The future of Washaw rests in your hands. Act immediately. Yes. Thousands of people roared in unison, the sound waves even causing the huge conference hall to hum. At this moment, the long-dormant national machine finally let out a roar that shook the heavens. With Yi Tian's command, the inspiring mobilization meeting came to an end. But this was not the end, it was the beginning of the entire base's frenzied operation. Thousands of top experts did not return to rest. Instead, like hungry wolves pouncing on meat, they clutched the materials Yi Tian had distributed and immediately began intense discussions in the hallways, the cafeteria, and even outside the restrooms. Yi Tian watched this scene, secretly feeling fortunate. Luckily, I had all the design blueprints and biological data for the redstone machines sorted out before coming. Otherwise, with their dedication to research, I wouldn't have been able to keep up even if I stayed up all night yesterday. At this moment, the atmosphere in the staff headquarters was so heated it was about to explode. Several senior staff officers responsible for formulating special tactics were gathered around an Enderman biological characteristics analysis report, their eyes practically popping out. Teleportation. Ignores terrain obstacles. Controllable maximum teleportation distance. A staff officer slammed the table, his voice trembling. Old Wong, imagine if we equipped this thing with a specialized anti-material sniper rifle. The old staff officer next to him pushed up his glasses, swallowed, and added. No need for any cover, no need to find a sniping position. Fire a shot, instantly teleport 500 meters to a new position. The enemy hasn't even clearly seen where the muzzle flash came from, and the next bullet has already arrived from another tricky angle. Is this even a sniper? This is a ghost on the battlefield, the Grim Reaper. Meanwhile, on the other side, the officer in charge of heavy assault tactics was looking at the Iron Golem data chart, and doubting life itself. 3 meters tall, 2 meters wide, estimated weight over 10 tons, body composed entirely of high-purity iron blocks. The officer gestured, his face filled with horror. This thing has no pain receptors, and its strength is immense. If it charges at full speed. This isn't a creature, this is equivalent to a heavy-duty truck, traveling at 80 kilometers per hour, capable of automatic target acquisition, and wielding hydraulic pliers, crashing into your face. What light armored vehicle? In front of it, they're just made of paper. At the same time, in the underground third-floor hall of the base, Yi Tian and Zhang Zhongguo stood side by side. Before them was a giant enclosed space, comparable in size to a football field. 3,000 specialized hibernation pods were neatly arranged. Chief Commander, a project department head, wearing a hard hat and with bloodshot eyes, ran over quickly and saluted. Report, the first batch of engineering corps to be stationed in MC, totaling 3,000 people, have all assembled. The blueprints you provided for the fully automatic Iron Golem farm and high-efficiency tree farm have been divided into 30 research groups. Although the principles are quite fantastical, such as the logic of using scare mechanisms to generate iron golems, which completely violates science, everyone has memorized them. Very good. Yi Tian nodded in satisfaction. For redstone machines, they didn't need to understand the principles, things like chunk loading or agro-mechanics. They just needed to place the blocks in the correct positions, strictly following the blueprints, like assembling Legos. Uncle Zhang, let's begin. Yi Tian turned to Zhang Zhongguo and said. The mission for the first group to enter is infrastructure construction, not warfare. Many constructions in MC require high-altitude work, and scaffolding is too slow. So I've decided to have these 3,000 combat engineers all possess Enderman. Enderman. Zhang Zhongguo was startled. Those tall, dark figures. Yes. Yi Tian explained. Endermen are naturally capable of teleportation, have long arms, and can carry blocks. Using them to build machines will be countless times more efficient than humans. After speaking, Yi Tian picked up the intercom, and his voice echoed throughout the hall. Attention, everyone. Next, your consciousness will be guided by me into MC. The carriers you are about to possess are called Endermen. Remember, initial teleportation may cause dizziness, adapt as quickly as possible. Connecting now. Buzz. As the main control room switch was thrown, the indicator lights on the 3,000 hibernation pods instantly changed from red to green. A massive torrent of mental fluctuations surged up the base's signal tower, piercing the dimensional barrier and flowing into that block world. Yi Tian's consciousness body was the first to descend, hovering in midair. On the originally vast and silent plane, sudden gusts of purple particle storms began to swirl. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Accompanied by dense sounds of space tearing, slender black figures appeared out of thin air. They were 3 meters tall, completely black, with excessively long limbs, and a pair of purple eyes that glowed faintly in the sunlight. In just a few seconds, a formation of 3,000 Endermen covered the entire grassy area. Why is the field of view so high? My legs, they're so long. Is this another world? All blocks. The radio channel instantly erupted in chatter. The soldiers curiously examined their new bodies. Quiet. Yi Tian's voice resonated directly in everyone's minds. Now, everyone, listen to my command. Try to use your innate skill, teleportation. Target, that mountain ahead. Teleport up to it. As soon as he finished speaking. Swish. A daring combat engineer moved his thoughts, and accompanied by purple particle effects, he who was originally on the flat ground, in the next second, appeared directly on the mountainside 100 meters away. Awesome. The combat engineer shouted excitedly. This is too convenient. Before, high-altitude work meant climbing scaffolding for ages. Now, I'm there in a blink of an eye. Immediately after, purple lights flickered all over the mountains. 3,000 Endermen shuttled back and forth between the plains, treetops, and mountaintops like specters. Some even tried teleporting into the air to experience the thrill of freefall, then teleporting away again before landing. Reporting, Chief Commander. The excited voice of a company commander came through. This ability is too strong. If there's a war in the future and I'm given a gun, I could kite an entire regiment to death by myself, and they wouldn't even touch my clothes with a bullet. Yi Tian looked at the excited soldiers and interrupted them with a smile. We can talk about war later. The current mission is to move bricks. Yi Tian waved his hand, projecting a massive resource distribution map into everyone's minds. A clever housewife cannot cook without rice. Although we have blueprints and manpower, there isn't even a single piece of wood in the warehouse right now. Everyone, listen up. Using your instantaneous movement mobility, split up by squad. Start chopping trees, mining stones, killing monsters, and gathering materials for me. Within 1 hour, I want to see this plane piled high with basic materials. Yes. 3,000 Endermen acknowledged the order in unison. The next moment, a spectacular scene unfolded. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. All the Endermen instantly vanished from where they stood. Immediately afterward, in the distant forest, thousands of black hands were frantically grabbing a block of wood and running away at extremely high speed. The once dense oak forest was disappearing piece by piece at a visible rate. Small hilltops were rapidly leveled. Was this even a construction team? This was clearly a swarm of block-shaped locusts with teleportation abilities. Wherever they passed, not a blade of grass remained, everything became a resource. Yi Tian, floating in the air, watched the chests being frantically opened and continuously stuffed with materials on the plane, his lips curling into a wild grin. That's right. This is the washaw speed I wanted. Afternoon. As the last rays of the setting sun scattered across the blocky land, the once empty and desolate plain had completely changed its appearance. If an old-school MC player were to enter this place right now, their jaw would surely drop. Within sight, there were no longer messy weeds and trees, but colossal industrial beasts rising from the ground. To the east was a stacked iron farm tower that soared into the clouds. The sizzling sound of lava burning the iron golems and the clink of iron ingots dropping intertwined. Countless redstone machines stood all around. And in the very center of the base was a massive storage center. Chief Commander, Storage Area 1 is full. Storage Area 2 is overflowing with iron ingots. Oakwood reserves have reached 200 chests. Yi Tian floated in midair, listening to the constant reports, and looking at the chests below, each stuffed to the brim, a sense of indescribable satisfaction welled up in his heart. This was the power of the state apparatus. In just one afternoon, 3,000 Enderman combat engineers with teleportation abilities had forcibly created an inexhaustible resource fortress in this virtual world. Alright, the demonstration phase is over. Yi Tian glanced at the time and issued an order in the mental channel. Engineering troops, cease operations and rest where you are. Now, it's time for our sharp sword to be unsheathed. 10 minutes later, at the base's core plaza. As Yi Tian's thought moved, the gates of the prepared monster barracks opened. The monsters previously filtered through the mob spawner tower mechanism were teleported onto the plaza by Yi Tian using administrator privileges. Roar. For a moment, the plaza was filled with the roars of monsters. 500 zombies, 300 skeletons. Consciousness descent, activate. Yi Tian gave the command. In the real world, the elites of the 1st Special Operations Brigade, who had long been waiting in their hibernation pods, instantly completed the connection. The monsters, who had been aimlessly wandering with dull expressions, suddenly stiffened. The next second, swish. 500 zombies turned their heads simultaneously, and 300 skeletons raised their hands simultaneously. The chaos in their eyes vanished, replaced by a chilling discipline. They no longer issued meaningless roars but quickly formed neat phalanxes according to squad and platoon formations. A group of blocky zombies, dressed in tattered blue short sleeves and sporting greenish skin, actually stood in parade ground military posture. This scene was both absurd and permeated with a sense of deadly solemnity. At the same time, a beam of teleportation light illuminated the edge of the plaza. Experts from the military industry department entered with the first batch of rushed, magically modified equipment. Quick, quick, time is tight. An old expert in charge of the equipment directed logistics personnel, pushing cartloads of supplies toward the zombie phalanx. The current equipment is only adapted to the zombie physique. Let's start by changing the zombies' gear. Following this, a shocking scene began. Several logistics soldiers ran up to a zombie soldier. Comrade, lower your head. The zombie soldier obediently lowered its square green head. Click. A specialized tactical helmet with a square inner lining was securely fastened onto the zombie's head. The helmet was mounted with a tactical flashlight and an HD camera on the side, instantly giving this rustic zombie a cyberpunk feel. Put on the bulletproof vest. An extra-large tactical vest was fitted onto the zombie. Although they didn't need bulletproofing, the vest was mainly for mounting magazines, grenades, and communication radios. Here comes the most crucial part. Take the gun. The old expert personally carried a strangely shaped black rifle and walked over. This gun eliminated the traditional grip and trigger, featuring a huge square sleeve at the butt. The zombie soldier extended its bare, green block arm, aimed at the sleeve, and forcefully inserted it. A crisp mechanical locking sound rang out. The firearm was perfectly locked onto the arm. The zombie soldier tried swinging its arm. The gun remained motionless, as if it were a natural extension of its body. It tentatively pressed the block surface of its palm against the pressure-sensing plate inside the gun body. Hiss. The tactical indicator light on the gun instantly turned green, a signal that the safety was off and it was ready to fire. Perfect. The old expert excitedly slapped his thigh. This is the effect we wanted. The arm is the gun, and the gun is the arm. In just half an hour, all 500 zombies completed the gear change. Now, they were no longer the low-level mobs in the original MC that only served as cannon fodder. They wore tactical helmets, donned anti-riot armor, had large-caliber rifles attached to their arms, carried TNT explosive packs on their backs, and even had military bone conduction headphones hanging near their ears. This was a modern undead mechanized legion. Zhang Zhongguo and Yi Tian stood on the review platform, looking at this army that had never appeared in human history. Uncle Zhang, even after seeing it many times, it still feels unbelievable. Yi Tian exclaimed. If we deploy them, they'd scare the opposition senseless. Zhang Zhongguo took a deep breath, suppressed the excitement in his heart, and strode up to the microphone. Attention, everyone. Stand at ease. Boom. 500 fully armed zombies moved in perfect unison, causing the ground to shake thrice. Zhang Zhongguo's gaze was sharp as he looked at the monsters. Comrades, your current appearance might be a bit ugly, a bit strange. But in my eyes, and in the eyes of the nation, you are still the most handsome soldiers. The next mission is your first battle, and it is also our first step in exploring the another world. Zhang Zhongguo pointed to the 10-meter-tall portal emitting a faint purple light in the distance. On the other side of that gate is a world filled with zombie virus, countless bloodthirsty monsters, and unknown dangers. The nature of this mission is armed reconnaissance. Remember, you are not going there to fight to the death, you are going there to be our eyes. Zhang Zhongguo emphasized sternly. First, test the practical combat effectiveness of the equipment in the another world. Second, ascertain the terrain behind the gate, the distribution of zombies, and establish a temporary defensive position. Third, and most importantly, if high-tier zombies appear, you are permitted to open fire and permitted to self-destruct. You must bring back the enemy's data. Do you understand? Roar. 500 zombies roared in unison. Yi Tian stepped forward, looked at the team, and said only one word. Move out. Click, click, click. The sound of uniform footsteps rang out. The first task force, an advance army composed of 500 zombie special forces soldiers, marched with determined steps toward the portal leading to the unknown world. The company commander leading the way suddenly switched on his tactical spotlight, and 2 blinding beams of light shot into the deep vortex of the portal. Without hesitation, he racked the bolt on the square rifle attached to his arm and stepped across. Buzz. The purple light curtain swallowed his tall figure. Then came the second, the third. When the last zombie carrying a radio transmitter disappeared behind the gate, the large screen in the entire command hall did not show the expected image, but rather a field of dead static. Crackle, crackle. Only a harsh electrical current sound. What's going on? Zhang Zhongguo's expression changed as he looked at the technical director beside him. Why is there no signal? The technical director was drenched in sweat, his fingers flying across the keyboard, shaking his head in despair. It's no good, General. The plane barrier is too thick. Our signal waves are cut off as soon as they pass through. The radio waves simply can't penetrate it. That is another world. Our physical equipment has failed. The atmosphere in the hall instantly froze. Just as everyone was extremely anxious, Yi Tian, who had been sitting in the main seat, slowly stood up. No need to trouble yourselves. Yi Tian looked at the frantic scientists and said calmly. That is dimensional isolation between 2 worlds. Earth's current technology cannot achieve cross-planar live streaming. Then what should we do? Zhang Zhongguo looked eagerly at Yi Tian. Xiao Tian, do you have a way? Of course. Yi Tian pointed to his temple, a confident curve forming at the corner of his mouth. Don't forget, I am the sovereign of that world. All the soldiers underwent consciousness possession through me. Their soul links are all with me. I am the biggest signal base station. After speaking, Yi Tian turned to face the massive black screen, grabbed at the empty air with one hand, and softly commanded. Synchronize. Buzz. Without relying on complex wire transmission, Yi Tian directly utilized the system's ability, visualizing the images he received in his mind through mental energy visualization and projecting them directly onto the large screen. The large screen instantly lit up. Instead of single static, it instantly split into hundreds of high-definition small windows, along with one massive, overarching god's-eye view. In the image, it was a gray and oppressive world. The sky was lead gray, and visible dust floated in the air. 500 zombie special forces soldiers were vigilantly holding their rifles, forming a defensive circle array, standing on a ruined street. It's connected. It's connected. Cheers erupted in the hall. Everyone watched Yi Tian in shock. This ability to generate a signal with bare hands was more effective than any black technology. The next second, the company commander's voice came through the large screen again. Reporting to command, reporting to command. First task force has successfully landed, all personnel safe. Repeat, all personnel safe. The sound was incredibly clear, without any static, even clearer than real-world radio. Phew. Hearing this familiar reporting voice, Zhang Zhongguo and everyone else let out a heavy sigh of relief. This is Starry Sky Base, I am Zhang Zhongguo. Zhang Zhongguo grabbed the microphone, his voice steady. Report the environmental data around you. On the screen, the company commander's first-person perspective quickly scanned the surroundings. Although he had become a zombie, the professionalism of the Special Forces soldier remained unchanged. Reporting. The company commander's voice came through. This appears to be the ruins of a modern city. Gravity is about 1.2 times that of Earth, making physical movement slightly heavy, but this zombie body possesses immense strength, completely offsetting the gravitational impact, making it feel as light as a swallow. There is a smell of decay in the air. Wait. Suddenly, the company commander's perspective sharply focused on a shadow at the street corner. Simultaneously, the square rifle on his arm instantly lifted, and the tactical flashlight on the weapon fiercely locked onto that direction. Target spotted. 50 meters directly ahead, hostile creatures detected. As the camera zoomed in, thousands of people in the command hall simultaneously held their breath. In the shadow, several ragged, festering, bulging-eyed humanoid creatures were stumbling out. They seemed to smell the scent of living people. Although the task force members were also zombies, they could sense a different aura, and they let out blood-curdling roars. They are indigenous zombies. Are these the otherworld zombies? Zhang Zhongguo stared intently at the screen. Attention, all units. The company commander's voice was frighteningly calm. Maintain formation, do not open fire. Let them approach for observation first. However, right at that moment, those indigenous zombies seemed to sense the different aura on these fellow creatures, or perhaps they were enraged by the light of the tactical flashlight. They suddenly accelerated, charging over like rabid wild dogs. Their speed was extremely fast, far exceeding the slow-moving zombies in movies. Entering attack range, 20 meters. The company commander's gaze sharpened, and he decisively gave the order. Open fire. Tat 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 tat. 500 rifles simultaneously spat out tongues of fire. The dense barrage instantly wove into a net of death. Gunsmoke filled the air, which was saturated with nauseating decay and blood. Tat tat tat. With the final crisp burst of fire, the half-body zombie attempting to crawl up at the end of the street was precisely headshot, splattering filthy blood onto the dusty concrete ground. This was not some game screen. There was no white light, no experience bar, and no clanging drop sound effects. There were only severed limbs, dark red viscous blood, a real and brutal scene of slaughter. Safety confirmed. The company commander's voice rang out coldly in the communication channel, devoid of any fluctuation. First squad, maintain vigilance. Second squad, clear the site. Move quickly. The soldiers wasted no words and quickly dispersed. They pulled out the tactical daggers and sampling tubes from their waists. Black and red viscous liquid flowed all over the ground, emitting a foul stench. One soldier carefully searched through it with tweezers for a while, finding only clumps of diseased brain tissue. Report to command, sample inspection complete. The soldier's voice was calm and professional. High-concentration virus stock solution and mutated spinal cord samples have been extracted and are currently being sealed. The company commander's orders came through the channel. Attention all personnel, prioritize collecting biological samples. We need to know the composition of this virus. Move quickly. After sampling is complete, immediately establish a defense line. The soldiers moved swiftly. They took out specially made lead-sealed sampling tubes and began collecting blood, muscle tissue, and even teeth. All of this was done strictly according to the procedures of the biochemical unit, without the slightest delay. The second the company commander finished his report, Yi Tian's steady and clear voice resonated through the consciousness link in the minds of every frontline soldier, and also echoed in the Starry Sky Base's command hall. Vanguard Unit, establish a circular defensive position centered on your current location, and be vigilant in all directions. Technical personnel, immediately collect surrounding air, soil, and water samples, activate portable biochemical detectors, and conduct preliminary analysis. Crucially confirm whether unknown viral aerosols or spores exist in the air. Before we determine whether this virus is airborne, absolutely no potential risks must pass through the portal. Repeat, until absolute biosecurity is confirmed, the portal will operate under one-way control. Entry only, no exit. Upon receiving the orders, the soldiers on the screen immediately sprang into efficient action. Defensive circles spread layer by layer, with dark gun muzzles pointing at every corner of the ruins. Several soldiers carrying special sampling boxes quickly stepped forward and began to busy themselves in front of the instruments at the workstation. 15 minutes later, the preliminary test report was sent back. Reporting to Chief Commander, air composition analysis complete. Oxygen content is slightly lower than Earth's, and various unknown organic compounds are present, but no high-concentration viral aerosols were found. Preliminary assessment suggests non-airborne transmission. The primary infection routes should be bodily fluid contact and biting. In the command hall, everyone unconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. Non-airborne transmission meant that the worst-case scenario had not occurred, greatly increasing the feasibility of establishing a safe zone. There was no surprise on Yi Tian's face. This 100% certainty was exactly what he wanted. He turned to look at Zhang Zhongguo, his tone decisive. Uncle Zhang, notify the Enderman Engineer Corps to bring in the first batch of construction materials. Yes, sir. As soon as the order was given, action commenced. On the Minecraft world side, the Enderman Engineer formation, already assembled and waiting, instantly picked up the piled-up construction materials beside them at the officer's command. These were high-strength alloy fences specially made by domestic steel factories. There were even incredibly heavy blocks of obsidian, used to construct core defensive nodes. The next second, the portal's purple light flickered violently, like a swarm of bees passing through. Swish, swish, swish. Tall, black figures, carrying heavy building materials, appeared in the ruins of the zombie world. They paid no attention to their surroundings, immediately beginning work according to the blueprints already uploaded to their minds. There were no cranes, no mixers, only teleportation. Endermen laying foundations instantly appeared at designated locations with concrete slabs. Endermen building walls precisely inserted alloy fences into the ground, while another instantly appeared at the top to weld and reinforce them. Those responsible for the core fortifications worked together to meticulously stack blocks of obsidian, building shelters capable of withstanding heavy artillery bombardment. In the silent ruins, apart from the occasional roar of zombies, a small forward operating base, integrating modern technology and Minecraft blocks, was rising at a visible speed. Watching the bustling construction on the screen, Yi Tian's eyes flashed with a cold light as he asked the crucial question. Uncle Zhang, has the Air Force finished modifying the armed helicopters? He paused, his tone calm. If they're ready, I suggest immediately carrying out the first round of thermobaric bomb carpet bombing within a 3-kilometer radius outside the base, especially in areas with dense zombie populations. We need a sufficiently wide, absolutely safe zone. No sooner had he spoken than a combat staff officer, bearing the rank of senior colonel, slammed his fist heavily on the control panel, his eyes filled with excitement. Chief Commander's insight is brilliant. This is exactly what we should do. In these areas of extremely high zombie density, conventional clearing is time-consuming, labor-intensive, and easily puts our troops in danger. Using thermobaric bombs not only efficiently purifies the area, but the high temperature, high pressure, and hypoxic environment they create also maximize virus destruction, making it the optimal choice. Another staff officer, wearing glasses, with an elegant demeanor but sharp eyes, pushed up his spectacles and added. At the same time, we must immediately build a top-standard isolation and disinfection facility at the portal exit. All personnel, equipment, and even a grain of sand returning from another world must undergo a 4-stage disinfection procedure involving high temperature, strong acid, ultraviolet light, and particle beams to ensure absolute safety before entering the Minecraft world or returning to Earth. This defense line is more important than any military defense line. Good. Yi Tian stood up abruptly, his voice echoing throughout the command center. Proceed with this plan. 1. The Engineer Corps will prioritize the construction of the isolation and disinfection facility. 2. Frontline troops will hold their positions and await reinforcements, preparing to advance after the bombing. After issuing the orders, Yi Tian looked at Zhang Zhongguo, his eyes inquiring about the progress of the armed helicopters. Zhang Zhongguo glanced at the newly compiled report, frowned slightly, but then relaxed. Xiao Tian, the Air Force just reported that although the neural link system is complete, the dust filters for the air intakes still need final wind tunnel testing and reinforcement to adapt to the Another World's special airflow environment. But it will be soon, at most one more day, and the first batch of modified Z-10 attack helicopters will be ready. 1 day. We can wait. Yi Tian nodded, glancing at the huge portal. Anyway, the portal is large enough, with no opening restrictions. Once the helicopters are modified, they can fly in directly in formation and conduct a thorough purge of that world. Since the overall situation on the front line was settled, the rest was routine advancement and slaughter, not requiring him, the chief commander, to constantly monitor every minute detail. Yi Tian withdrew his gaze, straightened his collar, and walked towards the exit of the command hall, speaking to Zhang Zhongguo beside him as he went. Thanks for watching.